All right, Adam, thanks for coming on the podcast, dude.
Thanks for having me.
We were just talking off camera. You were saying your dad's the one who kind of got you into creating all these videos on death and how people die and all these terrifying things.
My dad is part of the genesis of dark science, you know, but it really is multifaceted. So as a kid, when I grew up, I was very terrified of like dying. You know, like I was terrified of death. My pets died. My grandparents died. You don't understand it as a kid. You know, you just know that death happens and it could happen to you, it could happen to your parents. And it's like, well, this is terrifying. And my parents would say, oh, Adam, relax. It's not going to happen to you. You're very young. You know, the chances are it's not going to happen. And that's not very reassuring for a kid. And the peak of like my fear of dying, and I don't know why I had a fear, probably because I didn't understand it. There was a girl at the local high school. I was in like 4th grade. She died from meningitis. She was like 15, and it was all over the news. It was a big deal. And so as a kid, I'm like, well, I'm going to die, you know, like this is terrifying. If it happened to this girl, it's going to happen to me. And so that just kind of like sealed the deal. Like if my parents went out to go run errands, and I'm like, this is taking a while. In my mind, they died in a car accident or whatever, or I'm going to get cancer, you know, just like crazy fear. So fast forward to about 6th grade, I joined the Boy Scouts, and you have a bunch of 10, 11-year-old kids around a campfire. They're just going to burn shit, you know, and they're tossing in styrofoam and plastic cups and plastic wrap. And I'm like, having a freak out. I'm like, guys, like, stop. We're going to inhale the fumes. We're going to get brain damage. This is going to be bad. And they're not going to listen to me. Yeah, sure. Just keep burning stuff. And there was a kid in my troop named Michael, and this kid was very smart. Like at the age of 14, he could have started college. Very bright kid. And I'm like, Michael, like, we're going to die. We're going to have brain damage. Oh my gosh. And he's like, oh, no. There's plenty of ventilation out here. The fumes are going to disperse. And there's oxygen from the trees. We're going to be fine. And immediately it was just like a switch got turned on. And I'm like, oh, now that I know why it's not a big deal, why I'm going to be safe, there's comfort, you know, in knowing why things are going to be good. And how it works, the mechanics of that situation. And so I immediately had this trust and comfort in science and understanding, you know, dispersion of fumes in an open area versus like a room or something. So that's like the first part, right? The second part is with my dad. So my dad was a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. He was also a nurse in the ICU. And for 30 years. So he had a lot of crazy stories, graphic stories. And me being curious to now being interested in science and disease and cancer, I would ask him things, you know, like, hey, you know, what happens if, you drink bleach? What happens if you do this? And he would, you know, no problem, explain it. He would say, oh yeah, I had a patient who, you know, their liver ripped open and there's blood everywhere. And we tried to triage this way and that. And yeah, I was just like, okay. And he had no problem because in his mind and what the situation was, he was educating me on what was happening. You know, I remember as a kid, I would wear my seatbelt across my abdomen. And he would say, no, put it below your navel at your pelvic girdle. I'm like, well, why? He goes, I've had patients, they get in car accidents, the seatbelt compresses their abdomen and just rips their organs apart, you know? And so just knowing that is like, okay, gotcha. So now I know why that's, and the pelvic girdle, he would say your pelvis is more stable. If it compresses, you're going to be okay. And just like that curiosity, that morbid curiosity, that's kind of like, you know.
Did your dad have the same curiosity? Like what made him want to be in the ICU? Like I always thought, like it's always been in the back of my mind, like people that are in the ICU, they got to be a different type of person.
I shadowed there. So when I was in college, I was going for med tech to be like a lab scientist in like a hospital. And so I just shadowed in the ICU for a week, and I'm like, absolutely not. No way. Because it is just constant death, and you see people in their worst states, and it's like, no. But my dad, you know, you got to have that sort of mindset and just to deal with it. And he had seen it for so long. He was like, oh yeah, this person, you know, bled out, and we did this and that. I'm like, all right. So I was kind of raised a little bit different from, you know, with that morbid curiosity, but in a good sense of like understanding it, right? But why he chose the ICU, I think that's just where he ended up, and he just stuck with it and said, I'm just going to do this.
Did it change him at all? Did he ever talk? Did you ever ask him about that?
It changed him in the sense of he knew things could get real, you know? He did tell me a couple stories that he would begin to like tear up. He had, you know, some patients die, and he had, you know, he tried his best, and sometimes that just happens, you know? Yeah. That, I want to say like messed him up, but it just gave him a different perspective on like life. So yeah. So, you know, growing up as a kid, fearful, but then having the comfort in science, and then the curiosity from my dad, learning that stuff. I've always wanted to be a teacher. I love to teach, and I love just learning things from teachers. And if you have a good teacher, man, you're just like, you're glued to the board. You're like, yeah, okay. And I wanted to go be a history teacher. So I majored in history, and halfway through, I changed to biochem. And I changed because this is like 2009, 2010, when the recession was happening, and teachers weren't leaving their positions, their finances weren't good, so they stayed in the jobs. And I was just told, like, you know, teachers, there's not many jobs. So I'm like, I'm just going to go for STEM. And then went for biochem, and I'm like, well, I love science, you know, I love teaching. I found a channel on YouTube called ASAP Science, which kind of does what I do, but it's more of like a lighthearted explanation of science. And I'm like, I can do this, and I love doing this, so I'm just going to do it. And that's how the channel kind of came to be.
The thing about your videos that is so compelling to me is the topics that you choose are like they're like, and I'm not saying this in a bad way, but they're like the most obvious things that I'm curious about. Like when I'm scrolling through your videos, it's like, yes, I've always wondered about this, but I've never thought to ask, and I've never seen anyone explain it because it seems like such an obvious question, right?
Sure.
And that's beautiful about it.
Oh,
and
thank you.
the way you do them also is you make it so easy to comprehend, and they're not super long and complicated. And I come away with a perfect, you know, understanding of what's going on and what happens after every video that I watch. So you do a great job with that, man.
Thank you. And you know, people ask me, how do you come up with these ideas? I mean, I think it's kind of hearkening back to my upbringing, and having that morbid curiosity as a kid. I kind of developed it as like an adult. And,
yeah.
I try and make sure that, like, since I love to teach, I want you to understand how this works. And to me, this is a big issue on YouTube science channels. They'll just blurt out like, this happens because this, blah, blah, blah. And I will take my time to make sure you understand the mechanics of a situation, why this happens, how this happens, when this happens. And so that's, you know, my goal. And with dark science, you know, it's a dark topic. You're going to get attention. Yeah. So you're kind of teaching people without even realizing they're learning, you know? So
what is out of curiosity, what is the craziest thing that your dad or you saw ever in the ICU?
I didn't see too much because I was there for a week. I'm sure my dad has some crazy stories, but one that comes to mind, and I think I can say it. It's probably fine.
We can censor it if it's not.
It's just, you know,
friendly.
No, it's. I mean, there's gonna be blood and stuff.
Yeah.
He had a patient who was a chronic drinker. And this has always stuck with me. And I believe he had like severe cirrhosis of the liver. His liver was just like to pieces. It was shutting down.
Wow.
And I think he said that this guy was losing blood from his liver, and they're just pumping in IV bags one after the other. And they couldn't get the liver, the wound, whatever it was, to like seal up. And something happened where like the doctor was in the room, or my dad was there, but they're like, we can't stop this. Like, you're probably going to die. And my dad said the guy looked at him just like, you know, he's like, he understood, and he was like, this is my moment. This is all I got. And the guy died not long after, but just seeing the guy's reaction to like, you're going to die soon. And he did die not long after. I think maybe like a few minutes.
Really?
Yeah. And I think he said he looked at my dad, and he closed his eyes and then was like at peace, because he had no choice. And you know, that can probably mess some people up, but I think my dad was, you know, he's a veteran of the ICU, so, you know, maybe that affects him today. I don't know, but that was a story that was really just like, holy crap.
Yeah, I've always been curious, like, when people are about to die, or when they have some sort of chronic disease, or they're dying of cancer, how their psychological mindset affects that. Like, some people give up, and some people keep fighting psychologically, mentally. They are resilient. And I'm like wondering how much of an effect the brain can have on the body in that regard.
I mean, there are studies that, you know, people who are more positive, who have family and friends around, will have better outcomes. If they don't beat the cancer, sometimes they do, depending on the stage and the degree. But if they don't beat the cancer, they have a better quality of life. And this can be, you know, through positive, you know, you have more endorphins when your family are around. Your body has, you know, chemical cascades that kind of help you perform better. But whether it be like adrenaline, again, it'd be in endorphins. Maybe if you're more positive, you're drinking more water. You know, you're doing more positive things that can help you. Whereas if you're more giving up, you're not eating. You don't care about your medication, and that will take a toll. I mean, the more stressed you are, the more cortisol you produce, and more inflammation on your body. So, I mean, the mindset is a big deal. I don't think it's the factor, but it definitely helps. Yeah,
for sure. Are you a hypochondriac?
I probably was as a kid.
Yeah.
Yes. Now I'm fine now, because I understand things, you know?
Right.
But I definitely was as a kid. I have asthma. I have like the worst case of asthma in the world. If I used to do football in high school, and I would run all the time. Now if I go for a jog outside, I'd be like, you know, I can't. So
really?
It's like, it's getting worse, you know? So I just kind of I lift weights and do the treadmill and biking, but even with that, I'm like, yeah, it's asthma. It sucks. So
no, I used to have those similar thoughts when I was a kid about death. I remember specifically one of my most terrifying thoughts that still I can like recollect vividly today is when I was really young, I would have these just thoughts pop into my head of like what it was like. I don't remember if this came after one of like my grandpa died or something, but I remember vividly when my first thoughts about death was like, you close your eyes and it's just black.
Yeah.
It's just black forever. That was the most terrifying thing.
That's still pretty scary. I got nothing for that.
Right.
But yeah, no, but as a kid, you're just like, holy crap. It's black, and you think about it.
You just cease to exist. You're just dirt, inanimate dirt, and there's nothing. There's nothing. Just infinite darkness.
Jeez,
that's a terrifying thing.
Yep. Oh yeah. No, I mean, there's no way getting around that.
Yeah.
Unless you have like religion, you believe in karma, or karma, like I forget what it's called, but
yeah. Well, I think there's I think it's like statistically proven, right, that most people when they reach a certain age, like 40s or 50s or 60s, they start to become way more religious and accept God. And yeah, I think so.
I see a lot of old people at church. Like a lot of old people.
Yeah,
hey.
yeah. There's not many like teenagers at church, right? Unless their parents are dragging them there.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to die soon. I should probably, find something. Yeah.
Yeah. So last night I told you I was fucking going down a never-ending rabbit hole on fluoride. Yeah. Because you had a couple videos on fluoride and you did like a deep dive on like the truth of it, because there's like a huge, I don't know if it's a misconception, but there's a lot of confusion out there about fluoride. And from my understanding of it, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong about this, but there was like in the 30s or 40s, some dentist got some sort of grant or got something passed into law where they could put fluoride in the water because this guy thought it would help tooth decay, and like specifically in Colorado, I think it was.
Yes. And
then they're like, okay, we're going to make this a mandate for the rest of the country. We're going to put fluoride in everyone's drinking water and try to save the country from cavities. But there's been studies on fluoride that is it true that it's neurotoxic?
So there's a lot of things at play there. I mean, studies that find, so fluoride at higher concentrations is just going to cause damage. It will have the effects of no cavities, but you're going to have a lot of other effects. Studies that have said, fluoride is a neurotoxin, or not a neurotoxin, but it damages your neurons and your neurological processes. Two things. Those are studies that have fluoride at very high concentrations. So in the U.S., the average concentration of fluoride is about 1 part per million. Very, very low. I was reading a study a couple months ago about fluoride, and they're like, yeah, like we found that people that were drinking this water out in this village in India, they had cognitive deficits, and they had diarrhea and this and that. Well, you read through the study, and they had a fluoride concentration of like 7 parts per million. So the higher you go, the worse it gets, or not the worse it gets, but it can cause more damage. If you eat enough potassium, you're going to die. Right. You have enough fluoride, you're going to have bad effects. Right. But the genesis of fluoride, I mean, is really interesting. So there was a dentist named Frederick McKay out in Colorado Springs, and he noticed his patients in this village or this town that were near a mining operation had, like, it's called Rocky Mountain model teeth, and their teeth had like a brown tinge to it. And he's like, this is really weird that they have this brown tinge, but these people have no cavities. Like they're good. Whereas people outside this region, they had clean white teeth, but they had cavities. He's like, there's something going on here. And there was a company that was mining aluminum from the mountains nearby, and they discovered that they were injecting or liberating fluoride into the water, and they were drinking the water. And it was very high. It was like 13 parts per million. It was very, very high. They're probably very sick too. But that's why they had that intense brown staining. And people don't understand why fluoride is in the water. They just know, like, oh, it's there because the government put it there. It's to make people, stupid, and couldn't be further from the truth. So,
well, I mean, George Bush's speech was pretty sinister. It was pretty scary.
What speech? With what?
George Bush Sr., when he said, "We there is a new world order after the Cold War that we are going to start implementing." Yeah.
I mean, we could go that. That's a whole different can of worms. Yeah, the new world order. Yes. But with the mechanics, understanding how it works. So this is why fluoride is in water and why it's good. And I can get into why it shouldn't be in the water. I think people should have the choice to drink water if they don't want it altered.
Well, they have to clean all of this sewage, right? And they put them in these giant circular vats, these giant concrete vats, where they treat it with tons of chemicals, not just fluoride, right? And that's the city water. That goes into everyone's faucets in the city typically. And in order to clean that water, you have to put a ton of chemicals in there to clean it. And I'm sure fluoride is one of those chemicals that is responsible for cleaning and sanitizing that water for people to drink it and use it to shower and stuff like that.
So fluoride, I think it does have some antibacterial properties, but the amount of fluoride in the water, now maybe there's a higher concentration before it goes out to the public where they could clean it. I mean,
Right.
that could be like very, very high concentration, but it's reduced if it goes out to the public supply for water. But getting back to like the mechanics of fluoride. So your teeth are made of a crystalline mineral called hydroxyapatite. And it's a crystalline structure of calcium. That's why you need calcium for your bones, phosphorus and hydroxy, which is an OH molecule, hydrogen and oxygen. And hydroxyapatite will dissolve when exposed to acid over time. And it'll break down from erosion, just eating and stuff, and it just decays. So that's why you need to intake calcium and phosphorus in your diet to replenish the hydroxyapatite. Well, it turns out fluoride can also bond in this crystalline structure, and it forms a new crystal called fluoroapatite. And fluoroapatite, based on the atomic properties of fluorine, makes a stronger crystalline structure. So it doesn't break down as fast when exposed to acid, and it's more resilient overall. So whether you're taking in calcium or phosphorus or fluoride, you're replenishing that fluoroapatite crystalline structure. So you don't have to have fluoride, but it's just better. It's like you don't have to have snow tires in the wintertime, but it's a lot better. So, that's why it's in the water. Now, I do think people should have the say, like, hey, I don't want fluoride.
Better for your teeth.
For your teeth, correct. Teeth.
Yeah, it's just bizarre that a fucking dentist was able to get this implemented into the country, the entire country.
Right. So
and it's still here 90 years later. Like they haven't reviewed it or revised this.
Well, from discovery to application was a long time. It wasn't like, hey, we found fluoride, put it in the water, boom. It was around 30 years before people were like, let's do this.
Really?
Yes, the first time water was fluoridated in the U.S. was in 1945 in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And before that, so McKay made this discovery, and of course you have the peer review process, and people are like very skeptical, yeah, sure. So there was a department of, I don't think it's in existence, Department of Public Health of Dentistry or something, but they commissioned a 21-city study where they went to 21 different cities and checked fluoride concentrations as opposed to low fluoride concentrations. And they found like this is consistent where people have fluoride in the water have lower cavity amounts than people who have no fluoride. And so it was over 30, 40 years. Like if we're going to put this in the water, this has to work. And so that's what they did. There was a very long study.
Right.
So, lots of people were skeptical. Like, no, this is madness. Put fluoride in water? What are you nuts? Like put chlorine in water?
Right.
Right. And it's not.
How about just brush your teeth? How about that?
Right. Yes. Yeah. I mean, you could just do that. There's fluoride in your
toothpaste.
Yes.
Well, I brush with non-fluoride toothpaste.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really. And you know what? Like at the end of the day, you don't have to have fluoride. Like you'll do just fine.
Right.
It's just it's better. It's not necessary, but if you want it, it's fine.
Wasn't there? How many studies did you look at involving fluoride and drop in IQ?
Gosh, maybe 2 or 3.
2 or 3.
Yeah.
And what were the studies were on rodents, or were they on humans?
These were on humans.
Oh, really?
Yes. Yeah. And most of the studies, just by nature of what was available, a lot of the studies came from China and India. And a lot of the people that they sampled were near industrial activity. And there was one study, I think it was either in China or India, but there was a village or a town of people, and they found high fluoride concentration, and they're like, yeah, this is causing cognitive issues. And it was high. But there was also arsenic in the water as well from the industrial processes. There's high levels of phosphorus, and arsenic is a toxin. Phosphorus, if you have too much, can cause problems. So we're really kind of saying like, yeah, there's fluoride, but there's also other things as well. So, it depends. If you're looking for high concentrations, you're going to see problems. If you're looking for low concentrations, you're not going to see problems. So,
and wasn't there also a study that basically looked at every single country across the world and found that the countries with the highest levels of fluoride in their water had the same number of reports of cavities as countries that had tons? There was countries with tons of fluoride compared to countries with little or no fluoride.
Yeah,
same amount of cavities.
Right. So with people, with studies where they had, I'm not sure if it was high amount of fluoride, but it was probably like the therapeutic dose. And this is kind of the humor behind it, is that they found that countries with therapeutic doses of fluoride and countries that didn't have it, generally people were like roughly the same.
Right.
Fluoride is not going to stop you from getting cavities. I mean, I've had cavities. I drink fluoridated water all the time. It's just something additional to help. It's by no means like this magic bullet that's, if you drink fluoride, you're never going to get cavities. If you have high fluoridated water, black tea has a lot of fluoride in it.
Oh, interesting.
Yep. And if you drink lots of black tea, higher fluoride, you'll have lower chances of cavities. But it's like, it's an additional thing to have. But I mean, if you would say fluoride stops cavities, like that's not true unless it's really, really high.
I wonder what countries or parts of the world have people that live the longest. I know Costa Rica is one of them. Remember we had Chip on here, Steve, he was talking about the blue zones across the world. Costa Rica was one of them.
Isn't Japan too?
I'm not sure. Maybe.
I heard Japan because of like their diet.
Yeah, it's their diet, it's their stress level, it's their lifestyle. It's not, I mean, it's how they get their food too. Like they're not eating crazy processed
Greece
food.
too. Yeah, Greece.
Okinawa, Japan, Italy. Okay.
They're called blue zones.
Blue zones. Ikaria, Greece, and Nicoya, Costa Rica. Now, can we cross-reference these cities or areas of the world with fluoride? Fluoride in the water?
Oh, there you go.
This will be fun.
Oh, AI, tell us.
Drinking water in Okinawa, Japan does not contain fluoride. Ding, ding, ding.
Well,
ding,
that's
ding.
only one.
That's fun. Okay, we got 1 out of what, 6?
Yeah.
Or 5?
All right, so that was, what is this? Let's see,
Okay, there's Okinawa. What's the second one? Sardinia, Italy. Oh, no, we don't have AI to help us here.
Fluoride content of piped water in Okinawa, only one supply had value.
Almost 5. Geez.
Wait, is this okay? Sardinia, environmental issues in cases.
There is no water or food
Fluoridation in Italy.
Food fluoridation. I've
none
never heard of food being fluoridated, but
except for isolated locations near what? What did it say?
I don't know where you're reading that.
Okay, except for isolated locations near volcanoes or polluters. Fluoride in water is low across the country.
Okay, and how about Greece?
Yeah, let's find out about Greece.
I like Greece. I'm going to go there someday.
Me too. We'll bring Amin with us.
Okay, fluoridated water contains...
Okay, fluoridated water. We know what fluoridated water is.
Is fluoridated...
Is water fluoridated in Greece?
No.
There is no water fluoridation in Greece.
Okay.
Wow.
here you go.
Interesting.
Let's go. What's the other one? There's at least one more.
There was...
Nicoya, Costa Rica.
Nicoya. Now, is this because they chose not to, or is it just that the rest of the world doesn't generally do this?
Probably just because they generally don't do it, I would imagine. I'm sure they're not doing it for a specific reason. No, there's no fluoride in Costa Rica.
All right. Longest living people. No fluoride.
What the fuck, dude?
I mean...
You got some explaining to do.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Yeah. So, I mean, fluoride is not used to extend...
Like,
your life,
of course,
right?
there's many other factors to this, right?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I knew before we even searched it, there's going to be one country in the Mediterranean diet, high in olive oil, fish,
Of course.
lots of good fats. And Japan, I mean, the diet's big. They have lots of rice. So, I mean, not a whole lot of red meat, and I think more fish too.
Yes.
I mean, they do have beef in their diet, but I think more of their diet's on like rice and fish, which is a bit more healthier.
That's interesting too. Rice.
Yeah.
I never knew rice was healthy. I always thought rice was like a carbohydrate, but it's not.
it is.
I guess it's not processed. It's not white flour, right? White flour is the
It's a complex
worst thing
carb.
you can eat.
Yeah. Bleached flour, yeah.
Bleached white flour.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's super processed and it just like gums up your arteries, and but rice is not like that, which kind of like surprised me.
Yeah, I think they're eating a lot more white rice. I think rice is, I mean, there's no gluten in rice, but
No gluten. Really?
yeah.
Huh.
Gluten's it's a grain protein.
Okay.
Found in grain. Rice, I'm not sure what rice is technically in like the classification, but I know that a lot of the Japanese diet is a lot of fish.
Yes,
Fish is good.
it
The
is.
omega-3 fatty acids,
Definitely.
omega-6.
As long as there's not a lot of mercury in it.
Oh, that's, yeah. I mean, that's that. Hey, you want
Yeah.
me to agree on that? That's absolutely.
At
yes.
one point they were supplying all the schools in Japan with dolphin meat.
Wow.
Dolphin, like flipper. And there was a crazy epidemic across Costa Rica where the kids were getting this neurotoxin, this mercury poisoning, and it was
that's a
really
neurotoxin,
it was
100%.
really messing them up, man.
Really?
Big time. People were getting sick. Can you Google when that happened? I want to say it was in the 70s or the 60s.
Oh, wow.
Type in mercury poisoning epidemic in Japan. No, Japan.
Oh.
Minamata, that's what it was. Minamata disease was linked to
1950s.
poisoned water in a fishing village in Japan in the 50s.
Jeez.
Nearby company was dumping waste, leading to high levels of mercury. Well, that's not what he said. He said it was because they were supplying the schools with dolphin meat.
Well, still, I mean, you eat too much fish, you're going to have mercury. Yeah.
So it was making the mercury in the water way higher, and that was contaminating the fish. Then they were eating the fish, which was really screwing people up, man.
Yeah.
And the same with like whale meat too, that has high levels of mercury, like any like
Interesting.
big pelagic fish.
Yeah, they're just engulfing fish themselves, tons. So of course they're going to get high levels of mercury
The
too.
smaller the fish, the better, the least amount of mercury.
Interesting,
Are going to
yeah.
be like sardines.
Oh.
That's the healthiest fish you can eat because there's the least amount of mercury in it.
Yeah, it's so small. Yeah, gotcha. I ate a good amount of salmon. Like I love salmon.
Salmon's delicious.
You know,
Yeah.
I don't eat too much. Hopefully, where it's causing issues. It's like once a week.
What Rick was saying something about salmon. He was saying, and I don't know how accurate it was, but he was saying that like the salmon is really unhealthy because it's all grown on these farms.
Oh, farm salmon's dog shit. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
seriously.
Right.
Yeah.
But most of it's farmed, right? Like how much of salmon that you eat at the sushi restaurants, how much of that is farmed versus
Probably tons.
the majority of it, right?
I eat wild caught salmon. Like
Oh,
I
really?
specifically seek it out.
Oh,
yeah.
you catch it yourself?
No, but
Okay.
I go to, merchants that sell it. And
Oh, okay,
what I mean?
yeah.
And you can so my wife and I, we eat salmon wild caught every week, like once a week. And where we were getting it, they were out, but they had farm salmon. And we had the farm salmon. We couldn't even finish it. Really? It was disgusting.
I heard they actually
Disgusting.
they dye it to make it pink too.
Yeah. And like when you see wild caught salmon and farm salmon, the wild caught's like a nice, vibrant, darker, like pink, whereas the farmed is like a orange pink. It just looks bad. Like, what the hell am I eating?
Right.
And when we were cooking it, so I'm not sure it's the fats in fish. Yeah, see?
Click
Yeah.
on that second one to the right, or either of those two, the top left, two top left ones.
Looks disgusting.
Click on that. Can you blow that up? Zoom in on it. So the farmed one's light pink. Yeah, that looks like my
Yes.
sushi.
Higher. Yes.
The one on the right almost looks like ahi tuna. It's so
Yeah.
dark, Leaner, cleaner, naturally pink. Yeah, man. Fuck.
So when we were cooking the farmed salmon, you could see. So I think it's like the omega fats in the fish.
Yes.
When they reach heat, when they get heated, they like turn white. You know what I mean? And when you put the farm salmon in the frying pan, it's just seeping all this white goo out of it. It's the higher fat content. It's like, this is awful. The wild caught, I mean, cooks perfectly fine.
Wow.
Look
Yeah.
at that difference, bro.
Yep. It's based on the diet, what they're feeding it, their lifestyle.
Fuck, I gotta stop eating this salmon. I was eating sushi. We had sushi last night, and all the salmon looked just like that.
We my friends and I went to an all-you-can-eat sushi place, like $25, and they'll give you all you can eat. You know?
Yeah.
And I'm eating the sushi, like, this is good. Yeah. And then like the thought hit me, I'm like, this is all farm salmon.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's no way they're catching wild caught salmon and just tons of it. No way.
They can't do farm tuna though, right? That's
I think you
definitely
can farm whatever you want.
Really?
Yeah.
We find that? They don't, there's no way they farm raise
I
tuna.
don't know. They get pretty big. Farmed tuna.
There's no way. I'll be shocked. Farm tuna is tuna that can be raised in pens or tanks, either in the ocean or land. But do they do it though?
If it can grow, they'll farm it. Yeah.
Ranch.
Young tuna are caught in the wild and moved to pens in shallow sheltered waters in bays or coves. There they are fed until they reach sushi grade quality, and they're sold in markets. The method is primarily used for Atlantic bluefin tuna, which is a profitable stock for the global fish market. They're usually caught between May and July. Blah, blah, blah. Where do they do this?
I think lots of it is in Japan, I think, actually.
I thought they caught it all though in Japan.
So I used
They
to work.
farm them in Japan?
I used to work at Red Lobster. I was a cook for 7 years.
Really?
Yes. So I'm like an amazing cook, you know? And all of our fish that came in frozen.
I used to love the Captain's Feast.
Captain's Feast. The hell was that? Was it like fried?
Or no, it was
shrimp?
the Admiral's Feast.
Admiral's Feast. That was all fried food.
Yeah.
Fried.
Yeah, dude, it's so shitty.
Oh gosh, it's terrible. Yeah. All of our fish that came in that was frozen was Japan. And I'm like, well, they're the
They're the
island.
They've always been the biggest seafood and fish exporter, I think. But I think that's
think so.
because of where they are.
Yeah, right. And it's
There's
an
the
island.
most fishing happens in Japan.
Sure.
The biggest fish market is there. But I didn't know they actually farmed fish there. Why would they need to farm fish when they have the most? They're like in the middle of the ocean and they like have all these fishermen and these whaling boats.
Convenience, man.
What does this say? Japan has over 100 tuna farms. Holy
Jeez.
shit, dude.
Yeah, so you got the Mediterranean,
There you go.
Japan, and Croatia. 100 tuna farms.
They don't farm tuna. What?
Jesus.
Human beings we're just killing ourselves with convenience.
We
Convenience is
definitely
destroying us.
It's so bad. I mean, just like the convenience from, like the processed food. Like,
Yes.
oh God, it's so bad. So bad.
I was just in Costa Rica for a week, and we weren't eating like great food. Like we were eating like burritos, and we were also eating like stuff like, Costa Rican food, like with like loads of rice and beans and like ceviche and stuff, and then tons of tacos. Even like sometimes we had burgers and shit. But even after we had like the shitty stuff, like the burgers, you didn't feel like you feel after you eat a burger in
No,
America.
yeah.
You feel light. You don't feel like you just ate a fucking pound of concrete. And it's
rock
all
in your
because it's
stomach.
not processed.
I think, I'm sure that has a huge effect on it too. I think beef is just, it's heavy. We eat bison burgers. Bison's more lean. So when you
Yeah.
eat a bison burger, like I feel like I can go for a run,
Right.
it's not as heavy, but, I'm sure the process of how they're raised and, processed definitely plays a role
Yeah.
for sure. Damn.
That's fucking scary, dude.
I don't eat too much tuna, so I'm not affected, but
Yeah. Why don't you eat tuna?
I
don't like it?
I prefer salmon. Yeah.
Yeah. Back to the fluoride thing.
Yeah.
You said that the few studies that you did look at that correlated fluoride to a drop in IQ, they were bullshit.
No. So
Okay.
if you're doing a study based on 1 parts per million, which is what we have in the US, that doesn't cause any issues. 2 caveats. High fluoride concentration can cause issues in developing children and specifically infants. So even with an infant, if the mother is drinking lots of like black tea, higher fluoride, that can actually cause issues. And they've done studies where they found infants that were in regions with high fluoride concentration, or their mothers had a diet high in fluoride, lots of tea. I think certain vegetables, I think carrots, I could be wrong on that, but certain vegetables have lots of fluoride. They found that children that had, while developing, lots of fluoride did have cognitive issues. So it's more of a concentration issue than it is the actual fluoride. So,
Got it.
you know,
Okay.
again, you eat enough potassium, you're going to have problems. So,
Right. Yeah, I would just be curious to whether the fluoride is necessary for cleansing and sanitizing the water, or if they still add it for the dental purposes. Like, do they really give a fuck about our teeth still in 2024? Like that much? Like, there's so much other shit. We got like fucking loads of homeless people on the streets. They're walking over to get into the Capitol building. Like, do we really care that much about our teeth?
Well, so it's not like a federal program. I mean, it's based on the states. Some states have it, some states don't.
But there's only like 3 or 4 states that don't, right?
I thought there was a lot. I thought there was like
Can we find that?
a quarter of it, I thought.
Let's find out what states don't fluorinate water. Or is it county by county?
It might even be a county thing. I think it's a state though, but it could be county.
As of March 2024, Hawaii is the only state that, they ban fluorinated water for public water. That's fucking amazing.
That's funny.
I'm moving to Hawaii. Most other states leave it up to individual water systems or localities to decide. So, some cities like Jacksonville, Florida, Colorado Springs, Colorado, El Paso, Texas do not add fluoride to their water because they have naturally occurring levels that meet or exceed the CDC's recommended 0.07 milligram per liter to reduce tooth decay. Texas in particular has naturally high levels of fluoride due to oil deposits and rocks. Okay, but so Hawaii is the only state that doesn't fluorinate water with chemicals? Or it says they're the only state that bans it.
Yeah. But it's probably based on the municipality though.
Municipality, right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, got it.
And again, I'm all for like people should have a choice, like you know.
Would well water stop all this? If you drank from well water, if you like dug a well,
if there's not natural fluoride in the area.
If there's not natural fluoride in the area, yeah.
So,
yeah. I got one of those reverse osmosis water filters under my sink.
Mm-hmm.
I think those get rid of most of the bullshit, but I think
I hope so.
I heard they also get rid of like the minerals, the good stuff in the water.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you're getting too much of a diet from water with minerals. You need it just for like metabolic processes and just living. But I mean, you don't think you get too much minerals or ions from your water, really. That's more based on like your diet, fruit, vegetables, that has lots of minerals, So, I mean, if you drink deionized water, you're probably okay. So,
what is the most popular video on your channel?
Anatomy of a Headshot.
The headshot one.
Yeah, that just 30 million views. I can't believe it still.
And it was stayed monetized or no?
Yes.
It did.
I know, yeah.
That's incredible. Well, you don't actually show any blood or anything in there, do you?
No, but
it's all like animations.
I do say lots of no words. And YouTube's like, yeah, it's fine. But
hallelujah, YouTube.
But that was before I think they really cracked down on like the first 15 seconds.
Yeah, but sometimes they go back and fuck older videos.
They better not.
They do that to me all the time. Like I'll get like a video from 3 years ago just got hit.
Really?
Yeah, 3 years ago.
Did they say what it was? Like,
yeah, it's always like profanity or something like that.
Damn.
But wow, the anatomy of a headshot is the most people are really interested in that, especially right now after that assassination attempt.
Timing, right?
Right. I saw like 4 videos last night of people doing. I sent one to Steven. Remember that one? I said so. People are like doing simulated shots. Have you seen the channel where they have like this head made of jelly with a skull inside of it, and they shoot it?
Grand Thumb.
Is
that who it is?
No, it wasn't Grant. I think maybe it was. You sent me 2.
Maybe it was. It's incredible, dude. They shoot this like jelly head with a skull inside of it. It's supposed to like be the actual composition of like flesh and gray matter in a head, and then they film it at like 100,000 frames a second.
Jeez.
And they show what happens. And they were doing some ballistic test. They were shooting like an old shitty AR-15 at this head, and they were trying to clip the ear.
Oh, wow.
They were trying. Can you find that video I sent you?
Yeah.
His name's Brandon Herrera. Brandon Herrera. That's who he was.
Okay. Yeah.
So click on that and see. It's beautiful. Just turn the volume down. And then like, he's like, because there's a lot of people that are saying that what happened was like a coordinated PR stunt where like he hired a sniper to shoot his ear to make him turn him into a martyr or a hero.
Right.
So he tried to do it, and he actually did. I think he did a pretty good job at it. Go a little bit farther. Yeah, right there. Watch this, dude. But this is like, obviously, this is not 150 yards away. This is like point blank, pretty much.
Right. And you're not counting for wind.
Yeah,
Right,
that's totally
exactly.
cheating.
Yeah, he's definitely cheating. Watch this. Watch this.
Ooh. Jeez Louise. Just like a little nick there, too.
That's incredible, dude. But then this other kid did it too, and he actually did it from like 150 yards away, from like a shitty like aluminum roof.
Yeah, he did it for reals.
And
The
he
sloped
had,
roof.
but he had like a really high precision scoped rifle, right?
like bolt action or something, right?
Yes,
it
it was
was
a
a
bolt.
bolt
It was a bolt action scoped rifle with a really good scope on it. Not like that kid had. The kid had like a little like, what was it, like an iron sight with a
I
red
thought
dot.
it was iron sight from like the picture. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like an
Whoa.
iron. It was like a red dot deal. But this guy used like a high level scoped in rifle, bolt action rifle from 150 yards away, and he was trying to clip the ear of a mannequin head. And yeah, this is him. Just go to the end; it'll show you where he ended up hitting it. I think there was only every single one of his shots took off a significant portion of the thing's head.
Oh, jeez.
Here we go.
So.
Well, that's a hunting rifle though too.
Yeah, exactly. That's way more accurate than what that kid had, right?
And the caliber is way more destructive too.
Look at that. That's, you're fucking dead if a bullet hits that.
Jeez, dude. Gosh, it's crossing both hemispheres too.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're
a goner.
You're
And
done
that's
for.
with no wind.
Yeah,
like
right?
There's trees surrounding him.
And this rifle is, I don't know, like 5 times more accurate. What would you say, Steve?
Well, he said that it's a heavier caliber and it's just a better rifle. So
Yeah.
If
it's
that
more
thing
accurate.
hits your skull right there, your brain's gone, right?
Oh, yeah. With a hunting rifle, you're
Right.
not even going to have a head.
Right. Oh, really?
I mean, pieces of a
And
head
look,
maybe.
one of them went in the nose. Like, jeez, dude.
Gosh, what a place to get hit. Ugh.
So what was your research like? Did you ask your dad about what happened? Did your dad? I mean, I'm sure when people get their shot in the head, they don't go to the ICU. They're just going straight to the.
That depends. If it's like a low caliber and they get nicked or that the right position they get hit. You know, there are ways to, and I'm going to say this very lightly and not super seriously.
Don't demonetize us.
There are ways to survive a headshot, but I mean, the right conditions. We're talking like, you know, a hair's width, right? And even then, it's like probably not, but you could
Survive, right?
Survive.
You might be a vegetable after.
sometimes. Yes, sometimes no. Gabby Gifford, the senator or congresswoman from Arizona who was shot back in 2010, she's still walking. That was a 9mm point blank range.
Also,
Yes.
the guy who was there when Reagan, attempted
Brady.
assassination on Reagan, Brady. Yeah,
Brady, yep.
He got shot in the head, right?
Yep. So, I mean, you can survive, and there's a lot of factors. So, first off, you want the
So
smallest.
is she like functioning normally?
Yeah. I mean, not normally. She has
was never the
deficits.
same.
All right, Steve. Remember, we can't show this stuff. Okay.
Right.
Oh,
That's that poor guy. He
Yeah.
was an astronaut.
yep. And he's also a senator now, too, from same state.
Yeah.
What happened to him?
Well, he's sleeping with her.
Yeah.
Oh,
So at the DNC back in like 2010, she recited the Pledge of Allegiance, and she was getting through it, but with like some difficulty. But she stood up and like, I pledge allegiance to the flag, and you know, so she's not the same person, right? You're going to have changes in personality and brain function, and it's very sad.
man, that's terrible.
Yeah,
And what kind of gun was it?
I think it was a 9mm.
A 9mm.
And one of the factors, so
The
to
velocity is a huge factor, right?
huge factor. The velocity is bigger than the caliber. Because the velocity, the higher the velocity, the bigger the shockwave that's being
okay.
put on the head. So the way I kind of started this video, the way I kind of got into it is my dad bought a book on forensics about all kinds of shots in the body, stomach, foot, leg, head, neck. And there was a whole section on getting shot in the head. And I was just like drawn to this book. Yeah. Malala too. Yeah. I think she was shot with an AK.
Right through the top of her head?
Yeah.
Good Lord.
Jeez.
Yeah.
The book.
The book, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's this whole section on getting shot in the head. I'm thinking like, bullet goes in, bullet goes out, like you're dead. But the amount of like details that go into the physics of getting shot in the head, I'm like, this is incredible. Like one thing that just threw me away was when the bullet goes in the head and the shockwave expands the tissue in the skull, you get cracking at the temples and sometimes the orbital because the skull is expanding. And you just don't think about that stuff. You're like, yeah, it's like a puncture wound. It's like, it's really not, you know?
The bullet's also spinning, right? At a
It's spinning, yeah. But the actual shockwave is from the production of the shockwave is the velocity of the bullet going in,
Right.
you know? So I made a video on can you survive a headshot, or like how to survive a headshot. And the ways that you survive, again, is a smaller caliber and a smaller lower velocity. So this is like a pistol, like handgun. The best cases is like a 22 caliber pistol, you know?
From 100 yards away.
Yeah, right. The farther away, the much better.
And there's reports of people being shot in the head with one of those, with like small caliber handguns, and the bullet just bouncing off their head.
If it's a far enough distance, if it loses enough energy, and it doesn't bounce off like a ping pong ball. I mean, it's like you're getting smacked with like a hammer, because that thing still has a ton of energy. It's not enough to puncture and go into your skull, but it's enough to, you know, deposit that energy, and it's just boom, you know. My dad was telling me a story. One of his friends went out to, this is during the Iraq War or something, and the insurgents were shooting their AK-47s up in the air, and a bullet came down and hit a kid in the head. It had lost enough energy where it didn't puncture, but like he got smacked in the head with like the force of like a hammer. The kid lived, but it was just, you know.
Brain damage?
I'm not sure the actual like degree of damage, but the kid did live.
I had a guy in here who was, I believe, I always forget what I think he was with the Ranger Regiment, and he was in Libya, I think it was, one of the bordering countries of Israel, and they were training some people in that country, and they were training these like, you know, this foreign military in like counterinsurgency and stuff like that, and they were doing a drill, and one of the people from the group they were training did this stupid thing where he took his assault rifle and just started like sweeping the ground, like like that. And he should have been doing that, but one of the bullets went like astray, as they all did. Most people hit the deck. He got a bullet right to the head, but he was wearing a helmet.
Sure.
So it fucking hit the helmet blew off, and it shot him like 6 feet backwards and completely knocked him out.
Wow.
And then he got admitted to that CIA's remote viewing program. But like he talks about how it like really changed him, like that experience. Like he had some crazy dream that he said he thought it was like lasted for days, and he had a dream of like dying and coming back. And then when he finally got like woken up, they did all these psychiatric experiments on him.
Wow.
Yeah, man. It's crazy. I mean, he's still with it. He's still, you know, super sharp and with it. But it like made him more spiritual.
Wow. Yeah. Well, near death experience.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah.
Jeez.
But like a direct hit from a bullet from an assault rifle to the helmet. Like that's
did it pierce the helmet? Like,
No.
did it really?
Maybe it did.
Slightly, or
Maybe it slightly.
I thought it did, but it didn't. It didn't obviously hit his head.
The
skull.
bullet never hit his head. I think it might have pierced the helmet, but it somehow blew the helmet off and like was a concussive hit
Sure it was.
to him and just knocked him back like 6 feet.
Gosh. Wild.
Yeah,
I mean,
man.
it's still very lethal. I mean, you could have cracking of the skull.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
just the concussion. Your brain bouncing back off your skull.
Yeah.
Jeez. Gosh. But yeah. To survive a headshot, again, lower caliber, smaller velocity. Big thing is the hemispheres of the brain. Gabby Gifford and a couple other people I'd mentioned in the one video, most of the bullets had gone through one hemisphere. And this has to do with connectivity in the brain. If you cross two hemispheres, you know, if one hemisphere is damaged, you have the other to kind of compensate. But if it goes through both, first off, you're losing both sides. So that's a deficit there. Also, if you cross the hemisphere, there's a good chance, first off, you're going to break connection in the brain. There's a lot of connection between the left and right hemispheres.
Yeah.
And so even if you have a bullet that goes through one hemisphere and kind of goes through the other. If it breaks enough connectivity, it can't compensate, But a big thing is if you have a bullet go through both hemispheres and it hits the amygdala, the brainstem, the hypothalamus, it's over. I mean, those are like your most primordial sections of the brain that keep you alive. Those get hit, you're out. You're done. Period. But if one hemisphere, this way or like kind of diagonal, you can live. I mean, I wouldn't ever say, hey, like, let's try it, like one hemisphere, boom. But it's just you have better chances. So.
Has anyone ever survived a decapitation?
Not that I know of. No.
Have you heard of those people that are getting head transplants?
I know that there was one, I think in Russia, they were going to do it. Some guy had terminal cancer or something.
Yeah.
And I think he backed out at the last second. Yeah.
I thought that they did it.
No, he found love. I think I know who you're talking about.
Do you Google it, head transplant? Also known as a full body transplant. Okay. That's an experimental surgical procedure that involves, we know what it is, but I thought it, so it hasn't been done successfully yet.
They've done it with mice.
Really?
Yeah. Yep. And the mice don't live. They die within like a day or so, maybe even a couple hours. But they do find that there is some prolonged activity, but it's not enough. I mean, an organ transplant can be hit or miss. A head transplant, I mean, you're talking like 1 in like a million working, unless the science, in the future. But they have done mice.
Steven, go back to the other tab. Go to all. There you go.
Looks like a male.
In 2016, Italian neuroscientist Dr. Sergio Canavero announced plans to perform the first head transplant in 2017. Valery Spiridonov, a 33-year-old Russian computer scientist with a muscle wasting disease, volunteered to be the first recipient. The procedure, called HEAVEN, or the Head Anastomosis Project, would involve freezing Spiridonov's head and grafting it onto the donor's body's spinal cord. However, Spiridonov eventually backed out of the surgery, citing the lack of funding from Russia.
You don't say.
So nobody's done it.
But again, with the mice, they die.
They die, so it would probably not work.
But I think in one study they did it, and the mouse had, again, like some prolonged activity in its body. Like it just didn't die immediately. It was a very, it was alive for a little bit of time.
Right.
But not like, yeah.
Has your dad ever dealt with people in the ICU who are transhumanists, who have that little dog tag to where when they die, they want their head to be frozen, cryogenically frozen?
I don't recall. No. That's a wild
phenomenon.
Heard of that.
There's a wild phenomenon where these people, either really rich people or people who can get buy a $1 million insurance policy, life insurance policy, and they transfer it over to this company. They will remove your head from your body after you die, and they will basically cryogenically freeze it and dehydrate it and preserve it for after the technological singularity when we're able to basically put your brain in a cyborg.
Yeah.
Some people are actually freezing their entire bodies in hopes that they can bring their whole bodies back.
Let's hope it works.
Yeah.
You don't cut the power cord.
Right. Yeah. Hopefully the grid doesn't go down in some sort of nuclear war, because the people that own those places, when the grid goes down, I bet you the last thing they're gonna be worried about is powering their fucking facility that has all those brains in it.
Oh yeah. No way.
But
yeah.
But yeah, that's a wild phenomena.
Transhumanism, yeah.
I don't think it's that far out when we're going to be able to basically transmit or download our consciousness to like another body, or like 3D print human organs, or like have these little organs, or either that, or they're working on creating like microscopic electronic like microcomputer particles that they'll be able to inject into your body that will be able to like regenerate things in your body.
Interesting.
Like targeting, this is what Chip Walter was telling us about, they're going to be able to create like microscopic little machines, nano machines that can go into like your arteries, repair damaged arteries, basically like make them younger and flexible again, or like target cancers or different things. He thinks that is probably going to be like the lowest hanging fruit for longevity and immortality, essentially, once AI reaches a certain level.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing I'm, most hoping for, I think that we are in the beginning stages of getting close, is growing human organs. That has science that can actually be done. I mean, it's just, can we do it well enough where it's like can actually work?
Yeah.
Because when like you're like a fetus, or when you're like a clump of cells, you have stem cells. You're made of stem cells that can differentiate into different kinds of organs. That's how when you're growing, you have organs. You have like intestinal cells, stomach cells, because the cells can differentiate at certain stages.
Right.
So if you have stem cells, you give those stem cells the right triggers and the right nutrients, they can form into a liver or a kidney or something.
Right.
But I mean, we're not there yet. We can grow tissue, like a small segment, but we can't do a whole functioning organ. You kind of need the real McCoy, the body, to actually do that.
Well, yeah, and it's also, I think it's, if you use stem cells from yourself or from like your kids, I guess they work like 100 times better than using just random stem cells, because they're already like pre-programmed to your DNA, right?
Yeah.
And it's not like, I don't think it's fully like approved to be used in the US.
I'm not familiar with that. Yeah.
We went through that, remember, Steve, on the last podcast?
Yeah.
He was saying that there's people that you can do it if you have some sort of special exemption, or like you're like you got one foot in the grave and the other on the banana peel, and you're like about to die. They'll like give you an exemption where you can try stem cells, but normal people can't do it.
Gotcha.
Like
I think it's the availability
unless maybe it's like something like a rotator cuff tear, they'll let you do it. But if it's like, can you find out like what the legality is or what the restrictions are on getting some stem cells in the US?
I know people think that, they still use fetuses to get stem cells.
Yeah.
But
and like umbilical cord blood and stuff like that.
Yeah, but you can pull them for your own, I think, bone, because the bones, I think, produce stem cells.
But the best way to do it is get it from your kids, especially if you have young kids. They can just they can just like sample the fat.
Oh, wow.
And then they can preserve that. I mean, if you don't have the like the placenta of like if your wife gives birth or a woman gives birth, you get the placenta. The placenta is a stem cell factory. April 2024, FDA has only approved blood-forming stem cells from umbilical cord blood for use in patients with blood production disorders. The FDA also regulates stem cells from cord blood for unrelated allogenic use, required a license for a new review process to ensure purity and potency. However, the FDA has not approved any stem cell products for general use. So stem cell treatments cannot legally be sold or marketed to the public. Cannot legally be sold or marketed to the public.
Yeah.
So treatments can't, right? But you can still acquire stem cells from like your own wife's cord blood or like their placenta and use it for yourself. So you can't buy it or like buy the treatment, but you can store it, your own stem cells somehow. But I guess they're saying like they can't market it or sell it to you.
I think because it's not an approved like procedure to actually do it yet. I think they're still kind of working out the kinks.
Yeah, but you should be allowed to at least test it on yourself if you want to.
But if it goes wrong and like, something happens, you might blame like the doctor, or this isn't FDA approved and this should have been approved. And I'm just thinking more of the legal stuff.
Stem cell research is legal in the United States. Is legal in the research is legal, but it faces specific restrictions and regulations. The controversy and regulations focus on embryonic stem cell research. Embryonic stem cell research is not illegal, but federal funding is prohibited if it involves creating or destroying embryos.
That must be research funding.
Research funding.
People, say no to that because, again, they think of like fetuses and, they're getting stem cells from aborted babies, but it's embryonic. You know, I think that's just one factor. I don't think it's the reason, but
yeah, man. There's one guy who Chip was talking about. He's some billionaire who started a stem cell company, and they were doing like lots of. I guess he's been like funding lots of research with stem cells. But I don't know how he's skirting all this stuff.
Is it that guy that's trying to like make himself young?
No, not that guy. Different guy.
Brandon something, whatever.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I don't know much about that guy. I've heard about. I mean, I've seen him do podcasts before, but
was it Hariri?
Bob Hariri.
Oh.
Yeah, what is his company called?
I think he's got. Is that longevity?
Cellularity.
Cellularity sounds.
Up top, you just passed it. It's the very top.
Oh. Cellularity.
There you go. Yeah. Brain Mapping Foundation, Society of Brain Mapping and Therapeutics, to celebrate this trailblazing scientist, surgeon, visionary, and leader, and serial entrepreneur. Okay. Well, yeah, he's doing stem cell stuff.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, AI is going to be interesting how it affects all this stuff, man. How it's able to, if they can, especially if they can regrow organs or transplant your brain. You know, people are going to start living a lot longer in the next 30 or 40 years.
Yeah. Once it starts to actually get, figured out, it gets cheaper, then it'll become more available. But yeah, the rich will have it first.
Yeah. For
sure. Yeah, that's interesting that there's actually doing a billionaire's funding stem cell research. I mean, that's good.
They're going to be the ones that live, like they're going to be the ones that live like 500 years. The rest of us are going to be like sequestered to only living 90 years, and they're going to be outliving everybody, and eventually they're going to become aliens, and then they're going to terraform the earth, survive all the nuclear wars.
Let's hope not. Yeah, geez. God.
Nuclear war. Nuclear war is another thing you make videos about, right? You did. I saw you do some stuff on the Demon Core.
Yeah.
Like like the science behind a nuclear explosion. That stuff's crazy, man.
It's terrifying.
I recently had this lady Annie Jacobson who wrote a book called Nuclear War, where she basically got access to all the documents, like the secret documents that were in the military, where they did experiments with all these nukes when they were detonating them and testing them in like the 40s, the 30s and 40s and 50s, 60s. And like how they did tests on soldiers, like young kids. They brought them out on boats, and they would basically detonate nuclear bombs and make these kids and these soldiers stare at these bombs, and or sometimes in other cases they'd make them turn around and like cover their eyes.
Yeah.
And these people were dying of all these crazy diseases. They like were infertile, like they couldn't reproduce, they couldn't have babies. They had like severe brain damage. They were dying of cancer, leukemia, and shit. Like it's.
Oh yeah,
it's insane how devastating that stuff is. And she also got access to FEMA's protocols. If there's a nuclear bomb that detonates in the continental United States, like it specifically lays out like the mile radius of the fireball.
Oh yes, yeah.
And like everything that's going to happen after 100 miles, after 500 miles, after 1,000 miles. First of all, the grid goes down. There's no grid.
Absolutely.
All cars stop working. Like you think your gas car is still going to work when there's no grid? No, it's not going to work anymore.
It's from the EMP.
Exactly. Yeah, the EMP. It's going to basically take out all the circuits. So if you don't have like one of those old school cars like that doesn't have an ignition to it, like your car is not going to work anymore.
And vacuum tubes are going to work. So I believe the Russian military does have some stock like vacuum tube technology because it's EMP proof.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Vacuum tubes.
Yeah, because all you're doing is you're heating two plates in a vacuum, and you have a transfer of electrons.
Oh, wow.
And there's no circuit there to be like burnt up.
I think the first computer was a vacuum tube computer.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. It was definitely. A guy that worked for DARPA. They were making the the Iliac and the Maniac computers.
DARPA. I've got a.
She wrote a great book on DARPA.
Really?
Yeah.
DARPA's crazy. I had a professor in college, just to kind of, because you brought up DARPA. He worked in research in the 80s in DARPA. I think DARPA was like the pre-internet, basically.
Yeah. The ARPANET is what it was called.
ARPANET, yes. Yep. And he said the people that were using ARPA were uploading images of like nude women and stuff. And so like essentially before there was the internet, the proto-internet had pornography,
Really?
It's just like as soon as you could share data, People are going to do I know, right? Like there's.
Do you see the tribe,
Gosh.
the tribe in Africa? They just gave them internet. They hooked them up to Starlink and gave them like phones
Really?
and tablets, and they're all addicted to porn now.
Oh my gosh, that's.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Because
It's like ruining their lives. Like it's ruining their their marriages. They're not going out and like finding food. They're
That's
not taking
nuts.
care of their families, or just like sitting there and they're all addicted to. They're sitting there whacking off all day.
Jeez Louise. So it really is just like toxic. Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good. It's good and bad.
Yeah. No, but like but going back to her book, she wrote a book about DARPA and like the creation of DARPA, and she was talking about the early scientists that were making the big computers that were called, one was called the Iliac, one was called the Maniac, and they were vacuum tube computers that were enormous. They were like triple the size of this room. And one of the utilities they were using this computer for, I believe the guy who made it, was it Herb York or was it, I forget the guy. No, it wasn't Herb York, it was somebody else. But you could probably find it, Steve. He used the computer to calculate what elevation they needed to detonate the bombs over Hiroshima, Fat Man and Little Boy, and Nagasaki to cause the most civilian casualties.
Yep.
So these high-level scientists are using this technology and the means to the end is to figure out how to cause the most death.
As it should be. It's warfare. I mean, right?
Terrifying.
Absolutely
Yeah, man.
terrifying.
Yeah.
Gosh.
There it is, the Iliac. Von Neumann, that's what it was. John von Neumann, that's who he was. Yeah, he built that computer.
Or is it? Fun fact, that computer was built with 2,800 vacuum tubes.
And weighed 5 tons.
Goodness
Keep going.
gracious. Wow. 5,000. Or 2,800. Jeez.
Yeah.
But 5 tons. Yeah. 5 tons.
Isn't it crazy that all these geniuses and all these super smart people were getting paid all this money and like making all these breakthroughs in science just for war, just to kill people on the other side of the earth?
Jeez. Well, Operation Paperclip, you know?
Yeah. Operation Paperclip, that was huge.
Wait,
These guys, I don't think was Von Neumann Paperclip? I don't think he was he?
Sounds like it, but I'm not sure.
I think he was Jewish.
Could I grab
He definitely wasn't a Nazi.
You get one for me?
Yeah, you want one?
Yeah, I think getting some dry mouth.
Go grab one.
I don't understand what it's saying here. It's saying, okay, the Iliac was built with 2,800 vacuum tubes, weighed about 5 tons. By 56, it had gained more computing power than all other computers at Bell Labs that represented 40-bit words, in which, oh, I see, 40-bit words is talking about words. So 12,000 of those words were on a drum memory. Holy crap.
You ever had kratom?
No.
It's great. It's like a stimulant. It's an Indonesian herb it's actually an opioid.
Wow.
I don't know. It's not an opioid, but it affects the opioid receptor somehow. So if you take a lot of it, it has like an opioid effect. But if you drink one of these, it's like this super calm energy, like focused effect it gives you.
Interesting.
Not like jittery.
Yeah.
It's great.
Oh, wow.
And it's delicious. Interesting. What is it? A Bell Labs. What does it say? Immediately after the 1957 launch of Sputnik, the Iliac was used to calculate an ephemeris of the satellite's orbit, later published in Nature. Isn't it crazy that these fucking computers that were 5 tons and took so much money to create
Power, too.
Now, like, you could fit probably the power and the efficiency of 100 of those computers into your iPhone.
Oh, thousands. I mean, your iPhone has billions of transistors.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the scale up is insane. I mean, what we have today is because of the discovery of the transistor. I mean, that makes everything possible. I mean, just the amount of sheer power that had to go into those machines. Because again, you're heating. The way a vacuum tube works is you have a vacuum, in a tube, and you heat up a plate so hot that it emits electrons. So it kind of,
Like incandescence? It uses incandescence?
I think it is I believe it is, yes. And because there's like a vacuum, they don't burn up from the oxygen.
Right.
And just the amount of power you need to heat up a plate so much that it's it's glowing. That's one tube. Imagine 2,800. It's insane. It's insane.
Yeah, that is fucking ridiculous, man.
Gosh.
Look up von Neumann. Find out where they find out if von Neumann was a paperclip scientist. I could be wrong.
Von
In EU, there he is, John von Neumann.
Was he the rocket?
Mathematician. I don't think he was working on rockets. No, don't type in paperclip. Just type in his name and see it. Find his Wikipedia.
And then search for paperclip in there. Yeah.
Yeah. Von Neumann. John. Oh, go to the top. Just go to the top. Let's read the top. He was born in 1903, died in February 57, was a Hungarian and American mathematician, physicist, computer scientist, and engineer, and polymath. Yeah, he was a genius, dude.
Sure.
He was responsible for, he worked on the Manhattan Project. That's right.
I think there is.
And he created he was he was responsible for those lenses they used to watch the nukes go off.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was responsible for creating those.
I know he did something with computer science as well. The von Neumann, I think it's an architecture for computer circuits or logic.
Did that just say he was an expert in ancient Greek?
Dude, he really was a polymath. Jeez. Wow.
Where
I saw it before you changed it.
All right. Greek. Ancient.
You wrote Grieg.
Ancient Greek.
You wrote Grieg.
Where
does it say?
Control F function.
You got it up there?
Von Neumann. Oh.
You wrote Grieg.
Oh, I see. Greek.
Von Neumann was a child prodigy who, at 6 years old, could divide two 8-digit numbers in his head and converse in ancient Greek. How nuts is that?
Oh, shit.
Goodness gracious.
What did you say? Science.
He did something with computer
science.
architecture. I think it's like the von Neumann architecture. I could be wrong. It could be someone else.
Yeah, paperclip. Paperclip was scary, man. I mean,
von Neumann architecture. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I know. Jeez. You know what's even scarier though? Have you ever heard of Unit 731? Unit 737?
remind me what that is.
So the Japanese during the war.
Oh yes, I've heard of this.
That's
what were they doing again?
Conducting all 731. Yeah, they were conducting all kinds of. I mean, it makes the concentration camps in Germany look like kindergarten. I mean, just the amount of stuff they were doing, all kinds of inhuman experiments that they would they would connect like twins together. Like
they were doing like the surgical experiments on people. And
the U.S., a lot of people don't know, they didn't really prosecute the people who were in charge because as a sort of, like a collateral, they're like, listen, we won't prosecute you if you give us your data on what you found. And
really?
The data was like useless. It was just all torture, basically.
There was also a Nazi named Miguel. I forget his first name, but his last name was Miguel. He was the Nazi that was like the famous for doing like surgical experiments on people, mainly children.
Can
you,
Dr. Mengele.
Yeah.
Mengele. Can you look him up, Steve?
That was on. I think it's on your notes.
On mine. Oh, you wrote about Mengele on the notes.
Oh yeah.
And I think he died in like Argentina at an old age too, which is really terrible. But
just like Hitler, right?
Yeah.
But there's a theory that thinks Hitler escaped to. We know a lot of them escaped to Argentina.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Okay.
But
so
we don't have the. We never had like any body of Hitler, right?
I think we did because they verified with the dental records.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the Soviets found him. Yeah, unless they're just saying that. I mean,
right. But they never showed it. They just said it. From what I understand,
I believe so. Yeah, because his bunker was like torched. Mm-hmm. So it was just that's how they used the dental records. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, Mengele. So they were doing human experiments. So there's a theory out there. Well, it's not a theory. It's going back to this lady Annie again. Another one of her books called Area 51. She writes about the Roswell crash, the flying saucer that crashed in Roswell.
Yeah.
I want to say it was like 47, maybe late 47, July of 47, I believe it was. I could be wrong. she interviewed a guy who worked for. He was an engineer working for some covert American Cold War organization doing experiments and like testing like anti-gravity and doing all kinds of crazy experiments on shit. And he was he knew all about the Roswell investigation and like what it was all about. And he told Annie under anonymity for her book that the flying saucer that crashed was a World War II engineered machine that was created by the Wright brothers. And the two aliens that were in there were not aliens. They were children that were surgically deformed and altered by Mengele, sent over by Stalin to crash land here. They were like drone piloted by Stalin with these kids in there. And they were crashed here purposely to like create some sort of chaos in the US and to sow panic, you know, like panic across the nation that like, there's an alien invasion or whatever. And she asked him, she goes, well, if this is true, why would they hide this? Because if you just told the public that the Russians did this horrific shit, it would just make the Russians look bad, not us. And his answer was because as soon as we found that, we started doing the same exact thing.
I've never heard of that before. I mean, that's
not many people have. This guy
sounds a bit left field for me.
Well, there was also in the 70s and 80s, there was experiments done on the East Coast. There was a school for like children with Down syndrome, I believe, or like children with cognitive disabilities, where they were doing experiments on them. And I think Bill Clinton eventually shut it down in the early 90s. Can you find that, Steve?
Yeah, what okay, so Clinton.
Type in Clinton and then type in disabled children experiments.
And where was this taking place?
On the East Coast of the US. I want to say it was in New Jersey.
No,
what the hell is that?
Oh, it's an actual link. I thought it was a corrector.
Fact checking Clinton's story of meeting disabled children.
Keep going. No, that's not it. It's not meeting them. This is a fucking way more sinister than that.
Disability activists. Yeah, it can be kind of tough. They do a lot of.
Keep going. Human radiation experiments. Is that it? That might be it. Click on it.
Might be like post nuclear war testing.
Yep. It was Cold War shit. Where the fuck's the article?
Oh, why?
Would you paywall? No. Oh.
No, it's
Bill Clinton. Okay. President Bill Clinton commented on the final report on human radiation experiments conducted by the federal government between 1944 and 1974. The government failed in its duty to tell the truth and protect citizens. The president promised compensation for the victims of these experiments. He also offered a formal apology to the survivors, their families, and to all American people who must be able to rely on the United States to keep its word, tell the truth, and do the right thing. As an additional measure, President Clinton signed an executive order instructing every agency of the federal government which conducts, supports, or regulates research involving human beings to immediately review their procedures and report back by the end of the year. The president also created the Bioethics Advisory Commission to supervise such research. He hopes the commission will ensure the government never again strays from basic values of protecting and being truthful to its people. They were doing fucking radiation experiments on kids, dude.
I'm not sure if it was kids during that time. I mean, it's possible, but I know that they put a lot of GIs out in fields where they would detonate bombs. There's a very famous video of GIs in like a trench, and they detonate a bomb. You can see like the smoke streams.
Yeah, the nuclear soldiers and the nuclear veterans.
And they detonate the bomb, and they get up and they walk in the field. And I'm not sure if it's referencing that. I've never heard of
Steve, you're going to have to dig a little more. It's definitely a hospital. It was definitely a school for kids or some sort of place for children on the East Coast of the U.S.
Jeez.
For disabled children. They were doing it. I think it might have been radiation experiments or other types of experiments. But yeah, this was going on like during the time Bell Labs was big, during when Bell Labs and up in Montauk. This was around that time. What is this, Massachusetts?
Wow.
At a Fernald School in Massachusetts, a school for disabled and special needs children, students were exposed to radioactive iron and calcium in the late 40s and 50s in a federally sponsored study.
Jeez.
Nuclear Museum, click on it.
Yeah.
I think this is what Clinton shut down.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah.
Yeah, human experimentation throughout the Cold War. Dude, they did a lot of fucked up shit in the Cold War, dude.
Gosh.
The Dark Ages.
Their parents
Dark Ages.
their parents were not informed of the full nature of the experiments. Between 53 and 57, Oak Ridge National Laboratory conducted uranium injection experiments on 11 patients in Massachusetts General Hospital as part of their continued health physics research. They discovered uranium localized in human kidneys at a much higher rate than previously thought, and therefore that maximum permissible levels were too high. Despite the efforts of this experiment, however, occupational standards for uranium did not change at any national laboratories. Keep going down.
I mean, they had the Tuskegee experiments too.
Yeah.
I mean, the government, well, I don't know what about the Cold War made people crazy with just like destruction, but
there it is about Bill Clinton. In the early 90s, uncovered the nature, the Albuquerque Tribune uncovered the nature of these human experiments and identified the patients. That's when Clinton shut it down.
goodness gracious.
Yeah, Tuskegee,
Jeez.
dude. That's fucking horrific.
Love Canal too, but Tuskegee, yeah.
What's Love Canal?
In the 1940s. So this is actually where I live, out in Buffalo. Love Canal, he is doing it right now, was a neighborhood that was owned by Hooker Chemical Company, and they dumped all kinds of chemical waste. They plowed it over, and they sold it to the city of Niagara Falls, and they built neighborhoods over it. And for like 20, 30 years, people were, like, kids were having like deformed growth defects and cancer and stuff, and the government was like, yeah, it's fine, just build houses here.
Right.
But not even like really being like terrible.
Well, DuPont did that too. You know, there's a whole documentary about how DuPont contaminated. They were a lot of the runoff from their nylon products.
Really?
The nonstick pans and the chemical they were using to create Teflon.
Teflon, yeah.
The nonstick pans. They were draining all of their waste and their byproducts into the rivers, and it was killing all the cattle. Like the first people to notice it were the farmers. They were saying their cattle was fucking dying. And then people were getting sick. People, like, there was tons of people that worked in DuPont that were getting cancer. The kids were being born deformed and shit. And there was a huge study. There's a documentary. Find out what the name of that documentary is called. Just call it the DuPont documentary about chemicals. The Devil We Know. That's what it is, dude.
I've heard of that too. I've just never seen it.
Sinister.
Jeez.
Just the amount of chemical byproducts that are, I mean, even today, that are still in the foods, you know, like I had this other lady on here, Dr. Shauna Swan, who wrote a book all about the decline of sperm count and testosterone in males over the last 60 years. I think they started doing it or like 70 years. I think they started in like the 50s. And due to like glyphosate and like monocrop agriculture and how they're using all these pesticides to basically like kill all the bugs on these crops and stuff, and all of our foods are covered in this stuff. That combined with the microplastics, like everything's in plastic.
I was gonna just mention that. Yeah.
Our sperm count has been going down. I think it was 1% per year since the 50s. And I think since like 2000, it's been going down 2% per year.
Jeez. Well, my next video is on microplastics.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I did a whole deep dive on that, and like, we're all screwed. Like, we are legit screwed. Everyone, like, I read a couple studies where they took sample sizes, or not sample, they took samples from people, fecal sample, blood samples, urine samples, and everyone in these studies had some degree of microplastics in their body. And most of them are entering through not ingestion, but inhalation. And your lungs is the biggest, reservoir for these plastics. And they're going in and they're staying there. They're biopersistent. Your body cannot break it down.
Right.
And they're beginning to draw parallels with increases in autoimmune diseases and cancer.
Absolutely.
Because what these do is they're toxic. They're toxic to cells. They cause cells to produce or induce inflammation, and it's a very low grade level. It's not like, you know, you have like a bruise or like you have cancer. It's very low grade, and it's very insidious over time. Because the more plastics you ingest and inhale over the years, you have more and more inflammation, and they're beginning to wonder if the parallel between cancer and autoimmune diseases is with microplastics. And they're like thinking, yeah, it's probably the case.
Well, it's definitely what she lays out in her book, how it is like very, very clear that it is creating a huge drop in male fertility. And that's why, you know, the birth rate around the world is plummeting. You know, people can't have kids like they used to. And there's another crazy study that's a part of it where she found a way to measure how much people were exposed to these phthalates and these microplastics during the gestation period, and but before these kids are born. After they're born, they did a study where they measured what's called the AGD, which is basically the gooch. It's the distance between your asshole and your ball sack.
Yeah.
So the shorter that distance is, the more you were exposed to these phthalates and these microplastics, and the more of it that you have in your blood.
Wow.
And that it's like, and that's directly correlated to your sperm count and your testosterone level.
Yeah, it must interfere with some kind of like process of development. You know? Jeez, wow. Yeah, I mean, every person has microplastics. Period.
And one of the best ways you can avoid microplastics, apart from the obvious, like drinking out of like bottled waters and like using them for all your food and all that stuff, is taking your shoes off outside, not bringing your shoes inside. Because your shoes, when you're walking around in the street or anywhere out in the public and you bring them in your house, they bring in a ton of microplastics. Going to what you said, a lot of it comes through inhalation.
Yeah.
So that's important. Make sure you leave your shoes outside, folks.
Do you know what the largest contributor of microplastics are? I bet you'll never guess.
The largest contributor.
It's not like an industry per se, but it's like a product, sort of.
Not bottled water?
No, I mean that's definitely one of them, but the highest is actually car tires.
Oh, interesting.
Of course.
They're made of synthetic and natural rubbers. But if you think about it, a car tire is constantly being worn down, and the speed and the heat's releasing all the particles. And so they find that the highest concentration of microplastics that you inhale are near roads. Because again, you have the breakdown of the tire, and then the car is moving, and then the wind and the speed just kicks it all up. And so, I mean, we all have cars.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's insane, man.
Yep. And you want to stop that, you got to stop car tires.
Jesus Christ.
Good luck with that.
Technology is just killing us.
It's a trade-off.
Convenience.
Yeah, that's convenience, yeah. Geez.
Do you think there's any way that we'll be able to reverse all this shit?
No. I mean, you have microplastics bound up in your organs right now, and they're there forever. And it's not like, you know, you can like remove plaque from like a clogged artery. You know, these are micrometers big, like smaller than the diameter of a human hair. They're there for good. Unless, I mean, this is pushing it, but unless they can somehow engineer bacteria that can break down plastic, which, I mean, you'd be injecting bacteria into your body to break down plastic, and that just sounds terrible, you know?
Yeah.
So it's there for good. The only thing we can do is reduce the amount that's happening to us and future generations.
Yeah, you would think that we'd be able to, with AI, create some sort of antidote to some of this shit.
I mean, with AI, like...
Because, like, it's an industry that's fueled by billions of dollars. So it's going to be like, you can't just fucking stop it. That's easier said way easier said than done. So, like, maybe you can put money into... That lighting's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
Maybe you can put some money into, like, some sort of economic push behind creating an antidote or some sort of cure to it somehow, or some sort of experimental medicine I know it's like, it sounds so far-fetched. Like, how the fuck are you gonna create something that's gonna take microplastics out of your blood and your cells, right?
Mm-hmm. I don't think we're there yet. I don't think we ever will be.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the damage is so pervasive.
Yeah.
Every organ, just, it's awful. The best we can do is just curb towards more renewable products.
Mm-hmm.
Plastic is so convenient. You can mold anything from it. The size, the durability. It's really like perfect, but with a trade-off.
Huge trade-off.
Yeah. So you might not get cancer now, but after 60 years of living and inhaling plastics,
right,
the damage will come.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about like what the evolution of drugs is going to be over the next 50 years.
I'm not sure what the future holds for drug technology,
because it's pretty wild to think about even like the drugs we have now, like I had no idea that there was a drug you could take that would stop you from being killed from cyanide. Like there's an antidote you can take that basically will stop cyanide from killing
sodium
you.
nitrite, I believe it is. There's multiple. That's one I do know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I didn't even know that existed.
Oh yeah.
So imagine if there was a drug that could, like, if you had leukemia, there's a drug you can take to counteract or fucking be an antidote to leukemia.
Well, so the issue with cancer is it's again like multifaceted. The first thing is no cancer, like your cancer isn't the same as my cancer. If you have lung cancer and I have lung cancer, it's like our fingerprints. It's specific to you.
Yeah. So
it's hard to produce a drug or a therapy that's going to have that, wide effect, right? Secondly is cancer, at least what we're doing now, we're trying to target, in cancer therapy, is target cells that divide very quickly, right? So cells that divide faster, like your intestinal cells, right? Because they're constantly being slowed off from the digestive process, food passing through, pulling off the cells. So when you take chemotherapy, those cells are targeted.
Right.
Right. And the idea is cancer cells reproduce very quickly in high amounts. So we're going to target those as well. That's the best we can do, really.
They don't target it very well, though.
No, it's very
You're basically
systemic.
blasting your body with nuclear radiation.
So nuclear radiation.
Not really nuclear,
yeah.
but it's like you're basically nuking yourself. You're killing at all the other surrounding tissue.
Yeah. It's destructive.
It's very primitive, considering where we're at.
I would say so. Yeah.
Considering all the other technology we have, it seems super primitive. Like, how have we not been able to innovate beyond chemotherapy? When did chemotherapy first come about? Do you know? Was it the 50s?
I know that people say it started in like the First World War as like a weapon. I'm not really familiar with that, but I know it started in like the 40s and 50s, and it's still a good choice for cancer therapy in the beginning stages. It's by no means like the best, but
have you ever heard of CAR T therapy?
CAR T, like CART? No, never.
Can you Google that, Steve? I heard that was like a new experimental thing that they were doing with leukemia, where you can do this thing called CAR T therapy. CAR T cell therapy. That's what it is. Yeah.
Interesting.
That's a sponsored link. Go down below that. Scroll down. You'll find it. CAR T cell therapy, or CAR T, is a type of immunotherapy that uses a patient's T cells to treat cancer. T cells are a type of immune system cell that are collected from a patient's blood and then genetically altered in a lab to produce chimeric antigen receptors, CARs, on their surface. CARs are special receptors that bind to specific proteins on the surface of cancer cells, allowing the T cells to more effectively locate and destroy them. They're grown in a lab and given to the patient through an infusion. It's FDA approved to treat several types of blood cancers, including leukemia, lymphoma, and multiple myeloma.
Yeah. Myeloma, yeah.
That seems pretty innovative, and I think that's kind of new.
Yeah,
since the early 2022 rather, this came from.
The future of cancer therapy and treatments are going to be more biological based. And what I mean by that is actually using your immune system to actually treat yourself.
Right.
As opposed to chemical, which is like, so.
Is that essentially what this is?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is biotechnology. This is altering your own genetic tools to better treat cancer.
So they're taking a T. So a T cell is an immune system cell, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're taking these T cells that are already reacting, and I don't know if you know how much you know about this, but I don't know anything about it. They're taking these cells that are building up in your body an immune response to the cancer you have, extracting them, doing something to them in a lab, and then injecting them back in you.
Yeah.
Is that right?
I think so. There are special receptors that bind to specific proteins on the surface of cancer cells, allowing T cells to more effectively. Ours are special receptors.
This says they're grown in a lab and then given to the patients through infusion.
I know I've heard of something like this before. It might be, I'm not familiar with this specifically, but I know that there is antibody therapy where you...
That was what during COVID there was something that they did in Florida. What was it called? Fuck. They were doing some sort of therapy where it was like an antibody therapy that they would give you a shot of I forget what it was called. But like a lot of people were shitting on it, but they were doing it in Florida and apparently it was working really well. I never got it, but I heard it was good.
I know with antibody therapy, you essentially make an antibody outside the body that is made to target a certain type of cell or disease or an antigen, and then you inject it. The issue is sometimes that can produce a really bad immune response because you're having this heightened awareness of like, there's this protein in here, and you have this shock reaction, and so it can be kind of dangerous. But I think it's still in its beginning stages of being worked out properly. Yeah. Monoclonal, yeah.
Monoclonal antibodies, that's what it was, yeah. They were doing that and it seemed to be pretty effective.
Monoclonal are, so you have, is it polyclonal? Monoclonal? Monoclonal are like, they have one antigen that they go towards. So you have antibodies that have general, like they'll attack general antigens. This is made for just one specific protein. It's very sensitive. And so if you have that targeting a certain cell or an antigen from like a bacteria or something, it's going to be more effective. But the downside is you have a very robust immune response, which can be like, again, send you into shock.
Oh, wow.
But I mean, that's like in rare cases.
What a wild ride that was going through the COVID thing.
COVID sucked.
Freaking Biden's got it now. See that?
Biden has it.
He just got COVID. He's had like 4 vaccines. How is he getting COVID?
Dude.
He's been like triple boosted.
No one should say that you're not going to get it. It just reduces the chances.
Right.
It's not going to. I mean, I had COVID. I was boosted against my will, basically.
Really?
Yeah.
Why? Why against your will?
Well, just because my employer and I was in school at the time, and they're like, if you want to stay here, you got to get the shot.
That's fucked, man.
You know.
Did you see that? Did you see the recording they released of Fauci having that phone call with that guy?
I heard pieces of it. Yes. I don't know all of it, but I know there were some issues that he said about like,
I forget exactly what it was, but he basically, when he was testifying, they played a phone call of him talking to somebody. I forget who it was, but he's basically saying that like, we're going to make all the schools and all the employers say you got to have it or you're fired. And he's like, if they don't want to do it, fuck them.
And people now are winning lawsuits on being fired, you know?
Yeah, dude. I mean, look, you got to be skeptical about taking any sort of drug or anything when the company that's making it is federally immune to lawsuits.
Right.
That's a red flag.
Yes. Secondly, you know, I'm a man of science. You know, I trust most vaccines that I'm given, probably if not all. The issue was, and I think people had a reason to be concerned about it, was that, listen, companies take years to develop drugs. We're talking 5, 10, 15 years. I think the average time is like 7 years.
Right.
And they did this in a year. Like, by all means, be skeptical, just because you guys really got this done in like 9 months,
Right.
a year. Like, let's wait and see what happens. No, you're taking it now. That's how it's going to be. And it's like,
And the fucking totalitarian lockdowns and forcing you to get it or not go to school.
Yeah.
You're going to kick out of school or you're going to lose your job.
I mean, people are winning lawsuits on that.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I didn't know about that. but yeah, man, some of that shit that came out about Fauci, dude, is just fucking pure evil. Pure evil.
Well, it's the I'm right, I'm head of this, and if I say this is fine, it's the power of the position,
And that combined with money, it's the money and the
money
power,
too.
right?
Yeah, the science was there. Like, I think if they had waited some more time to do more tests, I mean, any vaccine is going to affect some people negatively. You take 1,000 people in a room, you toss a peanut,
Of course.
someone's going to be allergic.
Of course.
You're going to have bad results.
Right.
I'm not sure of the degree of how many people had negative side effects from the COVID vaccine, if it was above average bad effects. But I mean, you can't make a vaccine in a year and have it like across the nation. Like, you have to take this. That's just bad news.
Plus, it's still early, man. It's only been a couple years. You know, we don't know the long-term effects of this stuff. We don't know. I mean, they don't know the long-term effects of most drugs we release. And these pharmaceutical companies, if you look at like the history of American corporations and like the amount of fines and the amount of like civil what's the word when you have to pay them? Like the
Like a civil lawsuit?
like a civil lawsuit, but when they have to pay the person who sues
damages,
them.
right?
Yeah, like the amount of the amount of damages paid by corporations, like the top 10 or 20 companies are pharmaceutical companies that paid out like billions of dollars in damages from lawsuits.
And that's with years of research in producing the vaccine or the drug.
Right.
Yes.
So now we're going to create one in a couple months, and we're going to be completely immune to any sort of lawsuits or legal action.
That's good news.
That's not good news, dude. That's fucking
Jeez.
Get me the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I almost got the vaccine because when I was getting ready to travel out of the country, and the country we were traveling to had when I wanted to go home, I wouldn't have been able to come home if I wasn't vaccinated.
Yeah. So did you get it?
No, I didn't do it. Last minute, we canceled the trip. I almost
wow.
did it. I was literally fucking about to go to the CVS and get the shot, but I didn't for whatever reason. But in hindsight, I'm kind of glad I didn't.
Yeah, I got the shot in the booster just because I mean, it was fighting uphill.
Right.
And I'm like,
that's tough, dude.
It sucked. And I had kids in my class too, that paid for their semester, and then they didn't get the vaccine. It's like, well, we'll keep your money. There's the door, And I'm like, I'm not doing that. I paid for out of pocket.
Oh, here's the video of Fauci. You found it? Beautiful.
Yeah, it took a minute. It's embedded in this
I can't wait to hear
congressional thing.
We're gonna have to. Hopefully, we don't get demonetized for this, but we'll do it anyways.
Yikes.
Not demonetized, but hopefully, we don't get like a copyright strike.
Yeah.
All right.
Their lives, so they'd feel pressured to get vaccinated. Could we run the audio clip on that, please?
You think can be done about it. I have to say that I don't see a big solution other than some sort of mandatory vaccination. I know federal officials don't like to use that term.
Once people feel empowered and protected legally, you are going to have schools, universities, and colleges are going to say, you want to come to this college, buddy? You're going to get vaccinated. Lady, you're going to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
Big corporations like Amazon and Facebook and all of those others are going to say, you want to work for us, you get vaccinated. And it's been proven that when you make it difficult for people in their lives, they lose their ideological bullshit and they get vaccinated.
Thank you.
Jeez.
Whew. Is he not the fucking devil, dude? Good Lord.
Oh, it's a deep fake. It's a deep fake. Yeah, I know, yeah.
I mean, he literally admits it was a real phone call during this testimony.
No, I'm just saying that they would say, oh, it's a deep fake. No, it's not
the
real.
haters are going to say it was a deep fake.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah. Gosh. Yeah, the whole point is just, smack them hard enough till they just give in. I mean, that's... I had a coworker who was, I don't want to say harassed, but she didn't take the vaccine, and she had to come into work with like a COVID tests like twice a week. And she was just like, this is miserable. But
I don't know what's going to happen to Fauci after that. I don't know like what the latest is on him, but he should be put in fucking jail.
something.
They should make they should make an example of him so that people don't fucking do that shit in the future.
I mean, he has the protection of the federal government. It's,
Yeah. That just pisses me off, dude.
Yeah, true. Yeah, immunity due to his work position.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, he's been working in that position since like the 80s?
The 80s during the AIDS crisis.
During the AIDS, yes.
Yeah.
That's when he started during the AIDS crisis. You're right.
I mean, I think we're all conclusive enough that the COVID came from China.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. Even though all the media in the beginning said that there's no chance it came from China. Now CNN literally came out and said it was the New York Times. It probably came from China was the headline.
I mean, come on. Like in gain of function therapy was in China. Mm-hmm. It's like Jon Stewart said, if there's an outbreak of chocolatey goodness in Hershey, PA, it probably came from the factory.
Oh my God,
yes.
dude. That bit was incredible. What did he do that on Colbert's show? I think
he did, yeah. Or on his talk show, yeah, right?
If there's an outbreak of chocolatey goodness in Pittsburgh, wherever the Hershey's factory was.
Hershey, it probably came from the factory, No.
Not a chance.
Gosh.
Not a chance. Oh,
China needs to pay up big time. And did you see, I was watching those counts of like deaths from COVID the first like month, just like every day. Mm-hmm. And I think like at some point the US hit like 300,000. Fucking China's at like 80,000. Like, please.
No fucking way. It's 80,000.
No, like millions.
Yeah.
The sheer density of the cities. I mean, come on.
Did you see like some of the like people were getting locked inside their apartments and they had like loudspeakers that were talking in Chinese and like the roads were empty and there was like these like crazy doomsday sirens going, cars like police cars going up and down the street making sure nobody was on the streets. It was like something out of a horror movie in China.
Jeez.
I mean, they paid dearly for that, dude. Especially like with what happened with the shipping crisis, like with the distribution of shit coming from China, like all the shipping lanes got stopped. Yeah, man, that was not good for China at all. And the fact that Fauci put these fucking gain of function labs, I mean, I guess it's better than it being here. But like they put it in China to evade some sort of regulations that I think Obama put in place because Obama didn't want the gain of function shit going on in North Carolina where it originated.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
So they moved it to Wuhan, and then it got brought. I mean, then it went throughout the globe. But like the fact that we're just like the human. I don't know if it's a human thing. It must be. I mean, it's definitely a human thing. But like we're in this like crazy competition of nation states to see who can fucking destroy each other better. And billions of dollars is going into creating fucking super viruses that can kill people more effectively.
Yeah, and it was for war, yeah.
It was, of course it was for war, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, like that's like going back to von Neumann. The most money goes into fucking figuring out how to kill people. Mm-hmm. Going back to that computer that figured out what elevation should we detonate the bombs above Hiroshima to kill the most people. It's just like if you zoom out on all this stuff on history, it's just like crazy times, man.
In some senses, I'm like, yeah, you need a good, strong defensive military in case shit goes to the fan. But at the same time, I mean, that much money that goes into it. I mean, and things happen, nuclear bomb testing and Wuhan.
Yeah.
I mean, the cost for it. Jeez.
It's amazing another nuke hasn't gone off since the 40s, since whatever it was, 45.
I think the latest was the late 50s. I think the last was like 57.
The testing. Yeah.
Oh, but you mean like used in warfare?
Used in warfare, yeah.
No one wants to do it. I think people know.
They know.
Well, that's their head.
That's the crazy thing about Annie's book, the nuclear war book, dude. She explains, so she like interviewed all these top level generals who basically they did thousands of nuclear war games, simulations, right, in the Pentagon, like playing out what would happen. And they did the book explains a very real scenario that how it would happen if North Korea launched an ICBM towards the US. So we have like 6 minutes from launch to impact.
Really?
So imagine if they were shooting one from North Korea, they would shoot it over the North Pole, and it would go over the top of the Earth, and it would hit if they were targeting the U.S. That's how they would do it, and they would essentially target the first bomb would hit D.C. And so we have 6 minutes, right? And typically the presidents don't go through, they don't think this through when they're in office, right? There's way more things they're worried about. They're not like typically rehearsing nuclear war scenarios.
Sure.
That was mainly done like in the past by, previous people in the Pentagon and generals and stuff like that. There's a whole base in, I think it's Montana, where the command and control center is.
Yeah.
It's in the Rocky Mountain, or no, it's Colorado. It's in the Rocky Mountains. It's hidden
Yes.
in like a granite mountain.
Yep.
And so they literally have 6 minutes to make a decision what to do. But if they'll know within like, I think a minute and a half, or maybe even like 2 minutes, they'll know that bomb is targeting the U.S. Like they'll be able to figure out its trajectory based on all of our reconnaissance satellites that we have in space and like airplanes and stuff like that. They can figure out from its boost phase where it's going. So they're going to know it's hitting the U.S. So the first thing, this is a protocol that is written in stone, that as soon as an ICBM is launched from any country and headed towards us, in the first 60 seconds, we have to empty our Minutemen arsenals. All of our ICBMs that are basically in these ground bases.
Yeah.
In like, I think they're mostly in like the Midwest area.
Okay.
In like Montana and those areas. Those have to be launched because those are going to be, we have to assume those are going to be the first target of a strike towards us. They're going to try to hit our sites so those Minutemen rockets are rendered useless.
Yeah.
So it's use it or lose it for those, right?
Gotcha.
So as soon as one launches from another country, ours have to launch.
Just based on like they can't be used and they can also detonate here too.
Right.
Like
so
potentially.
if they launch a nuke and we don't launch ours, say like we're going to try to evade a nuclear war, we're going to maybe let one hit, or we're just going to hope it doesn't hit us.
Yeah.
We can't do that. We have to empty ours and we have to target them with them.
Gotcha.
So here's the problem. Now once we have fucking 10 or 20 ICBMs, I don't know how many we have. Maybe you can find out how many ICBMs we have.
1,000 probably?
How many Minutemen we have. Minutemen ICBMs, how many in the US? They all have to be launched. The problem is, okay, now we launched ours toward North Korea. They're going over the North Pole, right? And they're going to have to overfly Russia to get to North Korea. Now, within 2 minutes, you're going to think we have to get on the phone with Russia and let them know this isn't coming for you. This is going for North Korea. Well, I don't think there's ever been a time in history where we were able to get Putin on the phone that quick.
Sure.
I think like the last time that we tried to get a hold of Putin, it took like a week for him to get back to us.
Oh my gosh.
At least the president. So Russia's going to see it. Now they're going to launch all their ICBMs. And before you know it, and then NATO's going to start launching all their rockets and stuff. Then before you know it, it's all out nuclear war.
Just because of like the sheer time and the communication. Yeah. So
it's just a huge fucking breakdown of communication that happens because there's all these policies in place to launch ICBMs. So once the first fucking missile flies, dude, it's over. It's endgame.
Yeah. Jeez.
We have 400.
So 400
ready to go.
So imagine this. Kim Jong-un has a bad day, decides to launch one ICBM. That means, and if it's come towards the U.S., we're launching 400. So we have to hope to God that Russia and all these other countries don't launch a counterstrike when they see these.
Even if they don't, 400 nuclear missiles. I mean, that's a nuclear holocaust still.
Yeah.
You know? So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think North Korea is still behind on their technology. Let's hope they are, but
Yeah, they definitely are.
They have 50.
Their submarines,
total.
their submarines are still diesel powered. Ours are nuclear powered, so ours can go forever. They still have to refuel with diesel. I think they can go like a week or something. Wow.
Jeez Louise.
Yeah, their subs are shitty.
The last nuclear test was done in '92 by the U.S. and it was halted. They were cut short in October '92, and they no longer tested any more nukes.
Wow.
And that was in Nevada? Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was the last one before that one though?
Oh,
in the 80s or something? 70s?
Have you seen the graphic or like the animation of all the nuclear bomb tests that have gone off throughout the world?
I think I have, yes.
It's fucking amazing.
Yes.
It shows like the timeline.
Yeah, yep.
And then it gets into like the Cold War era and it's like boom, 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 all over the fucking world.
Jeez.
And then like you know, most people think they have this misconception that we have sort of like an iron dome of systems that can basically intercept rockets out of the sky, right? It's like essentially this is the video. Look, 1945, Trinity, Hiroshima, Nagasaki. Then you have the test over in the atolls where they tested the first thermonuclear bombs. Then you have Russia. Yeah, speed it up. Go to 2x. 53. Look at this. Boom, boom, boom. Look at all those ones in Nevada.
A lot in Russia too.
Bro,
I didn't know that.
Look at fucking Nevada.
Holy shit! Wow. And we're just going up and up and up and up.
Now we're in
Jeez.
66. Now it's going crazy. Look, the U.S. is at 600.
Nevada is just getting all the action. Jeez.
Yeah. No. Now. Yeah. Isn't it funny? Isn't that just like hilarious that all those bombs went off in Nevada, and that happens to be the place we like to go to gamble?
all mutants out there. Yeah.
Russia's all over the place.
Yeah. Russia.
Wow.
Well, Russia's huge,
They got the land for it though too.
and they're only like 200 behind us. 200 nukes behind us. 87.
Still going
88.
off.
They're still going off, bro.
What is that? What's the flag with the orange, white, and green? They just did one.
I think that's Italy.
Italy?
Oh, orange, white, and green. Oh,
yeah,
is
next to
that
Britain?
Yeah. What is that?
Orange, white, and I don't know
The
what that
flag,
is.
yeah, it's between.
It's not Mexico, right?
That'd be funny. If Mexico
That would be funny, right?
Nuclear bomb.
Bro, I'd be surprised if those cartels got their hands on nukes pretty soon.
Screw that.
They're getting all kinds of crazy technology, bro. They're stealing technology from, they somehow got technology from Israel, some sort of like crazy spyware technology that was supposed to be used by the military in Mexico, but now the military is so corrupt, they're selling it to the cartels.
Sure.
This guy came on the podcast that like reports on the cartels, and they got a hold of this shit. You can basically type in somebody's phone number, track where they are live, read all their communications on their phone, and now the cartel's using this to track their fucking enemies.
Gotcha.
It's India.
Niger?
India.
It's India.
Oh, India. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Gotcha.
But yeah, like what I was saying about the misconception that we have some sort of like interceptor system that can intercept these nukes. Annie was explaining that we have like a total of 44 of these interceptor missiles, and there's like 40 of them that are based in Alaska, and there's 40 of them that are based in California. And the accuracy or the percentage accuracy of these things being able to hit a target is like 40% maybe.
Well, that's good to know.
So we have 44 with 40% accuracy, right? If there's a nuclear war, they send all the fucking rockets, right? Jeez. Russia's got like over 1,000. We have over 1,000. All these other countries, North Korea, I think North Korea has like a couple hundred maybe. But it's fucking, there's no chance that's going to save us. No chance at all.
Just don't launch it. I mean, that's right. Or get to that country and stop them from launching it. But I think they developed one that was underground too.
Nukes?
Yeah.
Well, they did a lot of underground nuclear testing for sure.
Yeah, to like induce earthquakes, and which, I mean, it's amazing that didn't like, cause any plates to shift or something. But yeah, I mean, one gets launched and that's it. Mm-hmm. Goodbye.
And then she explains like the nuclear winter, how like basically it will block out the sun for years and years and years. Agriculture will cease to exist. People will have to live underground because it'll be so toxic. The atmosphere will be so toxic you won't be able to survive. So people will go underground. Most people will die. And then eventually after like 12 years or something like that, the sky is supposed to clear up again and the sun will come through. Mm-hmm. But by that point, the atmosphere will be so degraded that the radiation from the sun will literally kill you.
Oh yeah, because you don't have the ozone layer to
the ozone layer will be gone.
Filter it out. Yeah.
Right.
Jeez.
So at that point, all the fucking frozen dead bodies and the frozen dead animals around the globe will start to thaw out.
Yeah.
Right. And then disease. It will be like just plague after that.
I mean, at that point, you're going to repeat what happened to the dinosaurs. I mean, the sun was blocked out for 15 years, they estimate. And the sub-underground mammals are ones that lived, you know? I didn't think about the atmosphere being degraded, though. Just constant UV light.
Right.
Oh, that sucks. Gosh, you'd be baking.
Done. I mean, the only thing that will survive are the people. Well, initially, the people in the nuclear subs will survive until they run out of food and water.
Yeah, which wouldn't take long.
The subs,
a couple years.
Yeah, the subs can pretty much go forever on nuclear power, and then hunter gatherers might survive. People like remote tribes in the Amazon, maybe, or like some of those uncontacted tribes that are out in those islands out near like Asia Pacific. And then like animals that are underwater, like sharks and alligators survived.
Sure.
Deep water species, but like
whatever in like the Mariana Trench will be the dominant species, right?
Yeah, right.
Jeez.
But we're gonna have to figure out a way to get off this fucking planet if we're gonna survive. I mean, to even save our technology, like save like humanity, like even if humans don't survive, to like save a copy of us, we need to put a hard drive on the moon or something.
Hard drive,
or underwater. Like underwater
sure.
would be the best. Like if you could somehow, I think it's like, what is it? 90% of our oceans haven't even been explored yet.
Something like that's pretty high, or like the depth, I think, or what's down there. Yeah, I mean, the ocean's scary as hell.
The ocean's more unexplored than the moon.
That's what it was. It was something like space. We know more about space than we do about like the depths of the ocean. I mean, what the hell's down there?
Isn't that crazy?
Jeez. But I mean, if we were to go terraform the moon, I mean, once your resources are exhausted, that's on there. I mean, you're screwed. Like, what do you have on the moon? There's no nutrients there. There's no carbon-based materials. There's no wood or.
Well, if we could figure out how to 3D print meat or steak, or I mean, there was some shit that came out recently that we were trying to print steak or like grow steaks in a lab or something.
Yeah.
Like somehow do that. I don't know if you've heard about that.
I've heard about it.
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't do that on the moon unless you had the materials to grow the steak, though, too.
Right.
I mean, the meat and the cells would need proteins and carbohydrates and DNA. So, I mean, it only works if you have the materials, Yeah.
There was a report that came out from NASA a couple days ago, Steve, if you could find it. They found like some crazy caverns, like underground caves that were on the moon.
From like water?
I don't think they know what it was from. NASA cave moon. Yeah, look, new evidence adds findings hinting at a network of caves. There's theories out there that the moon is hollow, but there's people that also think that the inside of the moon is like the very center of it is a solid core, but then it's honeycombed. Like the inside of it's like honeycomb.
Like it was mined out or something, or
something like that. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. How fucking wild is that, dude?
I mean, those could just be from crater impacts from asteroids, or
I guess.
Right? Who knows?
How weird is it that we haven't gone back to the moon since fucking 1970?
Yeah, I know, right? You think they go more often, but I guess there's just not a whole lot of reason to go back. I think they know that there's nothing really on there, just a giant rock in space.
Did you see that there was something like some sort of like Senate hearing with the head of NASA? And the head of NASA was basically saying, we talked about this in the podcast a few weeks ago. He was saying that the Chinese they're sending satellites to the backside of the moon. And he thinks that China is trying to set up bases on the dark side of the moon or the backside of the moon.
Yeah. Part of that is because of if you set up sensitive material, like not material, like telescopes in space, trying to do research on the moon for radiation in space. The dark side of the moon has no interference from the sun, so you have like super sensitive readings on that side of the moon. That's like the best place to do any kind of outer space research, and it's so empty and secluded. That's one reason why you would want to put a base on the dark side of the moon, is you have like the best sensitive readings.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But he's like, I think the guy was saying like, we don't have any incentive. We don't want to do it, but we're going to let China do it. I find that to be kind of odd.
If China puts a base on the moon, we'll have one in like 2 weeks.
Right. That's what I thought.
Yeah. I mean, really, I think the moon, we should be thinking about putting an automated system on the moon that's like unmanned, and we can send back information, and that can be an extra way to do research too. You don't have to have a society on the moon. That's just going to be hell,
Or if you want to like explore places like Mars or do shit on Mars, like wouldn't the moon be a good like place to start?
Yeah.
Like a good mediary spot to maybe I don't know if you could launch rockets from the moon, but it seems to be like more plausible to launch shit from the moon than from Earth. If you could have some sort of like rocket base on the moon.
If you'd have to import all of your, unless there was like, I think the moon has lots of metals, but beyond that, there's not much that you can really use. It'd be a good stopping space, but it depends.
Right.
I'm not too familiar with like the moon and Mars. But I would say that'd be a good spot to at least put some kind of automated research facility or something. You know, yeah, not in our lifetime. I don't think so.
Yeah. I don't know, man. It's wild. I think that I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens in our lives, like when it comes to around, like, I think Ray Kurzweil saying like the 2030s, 2040s, that AI is really going to change the game for a lot of stuff.
Sure it will.
Especially like, not only this kind of stuff, but like longevity and diseases and, making people immortal.
If not immortal, much longer life.
Did you listen to Terrence Howard's podcast they did on Rogan?
Yeah. Oh,
what
yeah.
What did you think of it?
I was just, the guy he's just so confused. So confused. I feel kind of bad for him because he has the passion for it, but he's just way out there. I was watching it and I'm like, I think as a scientist, you have to have an open mind and just listen to someone, And I'm like, okay, this is kind of weird, but I'll just sort of listen and just kind of humor it. And I got like through 15 minutes. I'm like, this is just batshit crazy.
Yeah.
Did
you listen to when Weinstein went on there with him?
I did. I saw the first like half hour, like an hour, and he's in the same camp. He's like, you have you have a motor for a Lamborghini motor in the chassis of like a Volkswagen. You're just going, but you can't do it right, And I'm just thinking like this guy, I don't know where that came from, because he was an actor, and I know he went to some college in New York that was more of a liberal arts college. They had an engineering program, but they stopped it when he attended.
Right.
He
was saying some shit that made sense though, like about like apparently they recreated some sort of something like with Saturn. And they somehow
it's this hexagon.
Oh, it's a hexagon. That's what it was.
And it's a strange shape. And it was explained in a documentary why that occurs, but there's some type of vortex. Yeah.
I mean, good for Saturn, right?
So and so essentially he was saying that planets were created in the sun, like the sun burps out these planets. Right, and then they're slowly moving away and away, like and the Goldilocks zone that Earth is in right now, in like a million years or whatever, or a couple million years, was it Mars will be in the Goldilocks zone? Mars is closer or farther from the sun? Do you know?
Farther.
It's farther from the sun.
It's
okay,
the fourth planet. Yeah.
What's the next one closest to the sun?
That would be Mercury's the closest, then Venus, and then us, and then Mars and Jupiter.
Okay, so Venus. So like in a couple million, I guess if it's expanding, then Venus will be the next one in the Goldilocks zone, and Earth will be out farther, like maybe where Mars is now, and everything's like expanding because it comes out. The sun creates the planets. That kind of made sense.
I'm not really sure how that.
I'm not an astrophysicist, but
to
the layman,
the sun's just a giant fusion reactor. It's just burning. There's nothing to be made. It's just heat. There's no materials in the sun to produce rocks and the metals and all that's in Earth's crust. I mean, a lot of what he said is just nonsense.
Yeah.
He's just kind of tying together words that sound really smart and
right.
I mean, I appreciate his passion and that he wants to explore truths, but I mean, there's nothing there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, but
do you know why we can't see stars when they're in outer space? Like even on the moon, like Ed Mitchell described that when you look back,
it's all dark.
You can't. Everything's dark. The sky's dark.
I'm not sure why. I think it has to do with the perspective from Earth. We can see the atmosphere on Earth allows us to see the actual light because it's like bouncing through the waves. The light going through the atmosphere.
Right.
sort of not energizes, but allows us to see the light better. Whereas if you're in space, it's all like a vacuum,
Right.
and there's nothing for the light to really energize. And
That makes
what I mean?
sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
so, I mean, I think that's why. But yeah, no, space is scary. I did a video on, your body in space, and space is a near perfect vacuum. It's not a perfect vacuum, but it's pretty close. The reason space is like a vacuum is because it's so huge. It's enormous. And so there's no, the way you make a vacuum is either you pump out air from like a container or you increase the volume so that the
right.
air can kind of be more free. And space is so vastly huge that it's a vacuum. And in vacuum conditions, just the gases have no pressure holding them down. And so the gases in your gut and all your cavities just expand rapidly, and you essentially just kind of blow up.
Really?
Right? Yeah.
So like, if the door got open on the space station, everyone inside would just explode
Within seconds. Yeah.
within seconds.
Seconds. Fuck, dude. I took a class on vacuums in college. Just like, you like to make semiconductors, you have like very high ultra vacuums, and just we would put like marshmallows in the vacuum, they'd just blow
No
up.
shit.
Oh yeah, because right now the atmosphere of the Earth is pushing down on all the gases, and so they're pressurized and they're safe in our bodies. But when you go out to space, there's no pressure on the gases, no atmosphere. They just turn into a gas within seconds. So what happens is all the cavities in your stomach expand, your skin tears apart, and any water in your body evaporates into a gas. And then space is freezing cold. There's no heat in space because of the vacuum. All the gases just expand outward. You become a frozen husk, empty of all fluid and blood.
So it would be a pretty quick and painless death.
Yeah. In the 1960s, the mid 60s, they were testing vacuums for NASA on the conditions in space. And there was an astronaut, he was in a vacuum and his tube came loose. And the last thing he remembers, he passed out in like 10 seconds. The last thing he recalls is the saliva on his tongue vaporizing because there is no atmospheric pressure in the vacuum, nothing to hold down the gases.
Right.
And it just evaporated. And then he passed out. Luckily, they were able to get to him fast enough. So you pass out within seconds.
Oh shit,
Yeah.
dude. That's fucking freaky, man.
Yeah, it is. And then conversely, if you're at the bottom of the ocean, you just get compressed into a pulp. Again, all your cavities are destroyed. Your lungs, your stomach, parts of your head just crushed. Like
those
submersible.
guys that went down and explored the Titanic in that little submarine a couple months ago. And the thing just exploded. They had like the simulated on YouTube. I'm sure you saw it. The simulated animation.
The boom.
Of like how the thing imploded, and they're just like those people just like disintegrated instantly.
Man, goodness, instantaneous. And like I think the speed at which the implosion happens is like 2 times the speed of human perception.
Yes, right.
So you're just like you're there and then you're not.
It happens before. Yeah, it happened faster than they could have perceived pain.
It's just like lights out. Boom. Oh gosh. Yeah. So this is what he was talking about. I don't even know what this is.
No, I don't know what
I
this
have
is
no
either.
clue. I know that he talks about elements, and I think like each element has like a certain frequency, and maybe he's confusing like string theory and the periodic table of elements. Yeah, it's wacky stuff.
Yeah. But it's cool that, he went on there and was able to talk about it and it got people talking. That's for sure.
That's good. I mean, I think there's always something good that can happen from this sort of thing. I mean,
Absolutely.
with Neil deGrasse Tyson, he really explained the peer review process when he was sort of debunking what Howard had showed him. And I think that's a good time. It's a good way to learn what science goes through to actually learn and produce papers and studies.
Right.
And people learn like that's how it happens. The octaves, I have no idea.
That's sound.
Yeah,
I don't
dude.
understand it.
Yeah.
Wild.
It is interesting. Well, Adam, thank you so much for doing this, man. This was fun.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate it, dude.
Definitely.
Tell people that are listening and watching where they can find your YouTube channel and all the stuff you're doing. You got just one channel, or you got multiple, or what?
I just have one. Well, I mean, I have a couple small channels which I don't upload, but my channel is Dark Science. I should have a video up in the next 2 weeks, week and a half about microplastics. And
How often do you make videos?
Once or twice a month.
Once or twice a month.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing, dude. Your videos are incredible.
Thank you.
And they're fucking they're in, like I said before, like you are somehow able to pick like the most like obvious things that people don't normally think about, and like you do the craziest fucking deconstruction of them.
I've been thinking about it for a long time as a kid. It's just they just kind of come to me.
Agonal breathing. What is agonal breathing?
Agonal breathing is either through like a disease that puts well, I'm not going to go into that.
Is that like the death gurgle type thing?
Basically.
Oh,
so,
okay.
And let's talk about more in terms of like injury. If you have some kind of condition like a disease, or your brain gets damaged where you can't produce any oxygen, so like metabolic acidosis, where your body is chemically not making oxygen, right? Or you get injured and you can't breathe properly. Your brain gets injured or something.
Right.
Essentially, with agonal breathing, when that happens, that's a sign that the brainstem is the last surviving operating part of your brain. And that's a sign that like the rest of your brain is shutting down, if not shut down, and that the brainstem controls breathing and heart rate. And if you're just like that, that's just that's the death throes.
The final straw.
The final
keeping you
straw.
alive.
So if you see someone doing that, like get them to a hospital. Like they're about to die. Wow.
And then another one of your videos that you did, we'll talk about briefly, the anatomy of a decapitation, or like how a decapitation actually works. Isn't it true that like there's been reports that after people get decapitated, they're kind of still alive,
conscious?
In their head, still conscious?
Yeah, I mean they can't conclusively say if the person's conscious. I know
it's hard to do a study on that, right?
Basically, yeah. I mean, how, I know during the French Revolution they were decapitating people left and right. Someone said that they held up a head of a political dissident and they said jokes about her and she smirked at the person, which I think is just like, legends, like a myth.
Right.
But what they did discover, and they did it mainly on mice, is that when you decapitate, you cut off the head, the brain still has enough electrical activity for a couple of seconds that is indicative that could potentially have some consciousness, and it drops rapidly after like 2 or 3 seconds.
Right, because blood's gone, right?
Blood's gone. I mean, you put someone in like a chokehold, they pass out. That's pretty much what they're saying happens with a decapitation. Is if I put you in a chokehold, you just black out. But they're saying due to the amount of, they had like an electrocardiogram on like mouse's head, and they saw that the brain activity was enough that it was, again, could have some consciousness. Now, we're not saying that you do have consciousness, but that you have enough activity where there could be, so you're probably not conscious, but if you were, it'd be for like 2 seconds.
Right.
And then lights out.
Terrifyingly interesting shit, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for making this stuff. And for everyone that's watching and listening, it'll obviously be linked below to check it out. And any like social media stuff, like Twitter, Instagram?
I have a Twitter, but the YouTube is the main thing.
Right.
I don't post on Instagram really or Twitter.
Cool, dude.
So, thank you.
Yeah, man. Thanks a lot. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you much. Yes,
all right. Oh, yeah.
me too.
We did a Patreon before we started. We did a Patreon Q&A with Adam where we talked for like 20, 30 minutes about we had people answer questions, or he answered questions for some of the patrons. So if you guys want to check that out, that's also linked below. Good night, world. Mwah.